Has your class ever made the teacher cry? What happened? In 5th grade, we had a psychotic substitute teacher, probably in his late 50s. At the beginning of class, everyone was goofing off and he immediately shut us down by screaming "shut up" at us, shaking furiously. We all stayed silent after that because he legit freaked us out, but we came to the conclusion that he was hearing voices in his head, because about 20 minutes into class, he stopped talking abruptly and screamed at us again at the top of his lungs that we would regret being so loud, but no one had uttered a effing word. He then stomped over to the desk, violently swept everything off, muttering the entire time to himself, then went to the back of the room and turned all of the lights off. We were all terrified at this point. He silently paced around the back of the room for a while, then went back to the front and slapped the chalkboard. His next words were what I remember the most clearly. He was violently shaking as he yelled, "I'm going to tell your teacher how horrible of a class you all are when she gets back. And I'll make sure she burns you up. To hell with all of you." He threw himself back into the teacher's chair, and started sobbing. One of my classmates managed to sneak out and get the principal. He was escorted from the classroom a few minutes later, and we all had to individually go into the principal's office and recount what happened. Apparently he had just gotten a divorce and he had lost it. He was fired that same day. Honestly, I don't think we actually did anything to warrant his initial reaction. He just snapped. People who take walks at night. What's the scariest thing you've seen? Grew up in Japan, not too small not too big city. Worked a job that had me coming home daily at 2-4ish a.m. daily. I preferred to walk the back street that paralleled the main street home because it felt more cozy and peaceful. Nothing of note happened until one day. I turned the corner onto the side street and about halfway down there was a young woman. She wasn't doing anything, just staring at the sky. Staring straight up, neck at a 90-degree angle, mouth slightly agape, long black hair hanging. I hesitated but decided that, since nothing weird has ever happened here before, it'd be fine, so I went to walk by. I get up next to her, it's a narrow road so not a lot of room to maneuver, and pause to look at her. She hasn't moved or reacted to me, she's just staring away. So I fight my instincts and ask her if she's okay. She doesn't react. I look up to see if she's looking at something but there's nothing there. So now I'm thinking there's something medical going on, so I reach out and touch her on the shoulder. She jolts in and looks at me like she's just noticed me. I ask if she's okay and she just stammers and says sorry before hustling down the street the same way I was headed. I decided to smoke a cigarette to let some distance get between me and her, but towards the end of the street, she stops and stares at the sky again. Doesn't move for the whole 5 minutes it takes for me to finish my cig. I walk down the main street for the next couple nights. Am I the jerk for blowing up on my family after they came 30 minutes late to my birthday dinner? I turned 25 yesterday. The most disappointing birthday I've ever had. I didn't make any plans for the actual day because it's a Wednesday, but planned to throw a party at my house with my friends and family this Saturday. For the actual day I still went to work and everything was normal, but I wanted something simple so I asked my family, mom, dad and brother, the night before to go out to dinner with me at a nice restaurant I've been wanting to try. I confirmed a time that would work for everyone and made the reservation for 7:30 p.m. My dad called to wish me a happy birthday and tried to convince me to go to my cousin's house, who happened to be throwing a barbecue of some sort. I said I'd rather not because I really wanted to try this restaurant and just wanted to celebrate with them. It'd feel really weird for me going to a party of some sort when it happens to be my b-day and the attention I would get would be in genuine BC. Nobody at the barbecue realized it was my birthday. My dad says okay, no problem. This was a nice restaurant that are very strict with reservations, so I looked really nice and arrived right on time. My mom, who has not acknowledged it was my birthday, calls me and says her and my dad are still at the house and need to shower and get ready, but my brother is on the way to meet me there so we should order appetizers. 5 minutes later my brother calls me and tells me he's going to be late as well, that he's also at the house and I should get the table myself. Now I know this restaurant was not going to seat me without my whole party, and after a certain time they'd give the table away. I couldn't take it anymore so I hung up on my brother, parked at a building nearby and cried. I was so upset I declined all his and my mom's calls. At 8 p.m. 30 minutes after the reservation, my family pull up behind my car so I can't back out and surrounds my car. I'm in shock. BC. I purposely parked at a random building, but forgot my brother has my location on Find My Friends. So they surround the car and start talking about what a long day everyone has had and how I should come with them to find a restaurant that will take us. I tell them I've been crying, mascara running all down my face and do not want to be out in public or with them. My dad says I don't look upset and my mom keeps telling me to calm down. They were not understanding that this wasn't a haha okay I'm overreacting situation, so I had to basically yell at them that it was too late and to leave me alone. They left and went to my cousin's house. I got Whataburger on my way home and ate it myself. I was still so upset I barely slept, and texted the family group chat they ruined my birthday and I didn't want them coming to my party Saturday. I'm still so upset this morning. Am I the jerk? My wife poops in the shower. My wife poops in the shower and stomps it down the drain. Not a joke. She recently told me this and I've been living with it for weeks now. She even broke the news to me while laughing about it. You know what a waffle stomp is? She asked me as she laughed and laughed so hard she started crying. I feel disgusted and betrayed. I can't even look at her over breakfast anymore before I head off to work, and while at work all I can do is wonder to myself, is she doing it right now? Apparently this has been going on for years. Says she uses all the scented candles she obsessively buys online to mask the smell. I work 12-15 hour days, so plenty of time to cover her shit stink. A few times we've had to snake the drain due to a clog. Now I know why. I'm not sure I can live this life anymore.
My entitled sister-in-law thinks she's entitled to literally own my baby. I have been married to my sister-in-law's brother for 10 years, and there has always been immense jealousy and hatred towards me coming from her. She's always felt like I had the life she wanted. I have a healthy marriage, have a family, job stability, etc. I have 3 kids, one of whom is just a 3-month-old girl. She got married last year and they decided to start trying for a baby, but she was unfortunately told that she can't have children naturally. She was understandably devastated and had a bipolar episode which escalated into her having to be put into a psych ward temporarily. She was recently released and the family comforted her as best as we could. We recently had a family dinner with her present, and in the middle of it she tells me, "I think it's really unfair that you got to have 3 kids and I can't have any. Your baby is my last chance to raise a child, so I think you should give her to me full time. You would be allowed to visit sometimes but not more than once a week so I can create a strong motherly bond with her." She took my hand and held it with puppy eyes after saying this. Before I could respond, the entire table erupted with everyone talking at once, so I took my older kids upstairs. When I got back to the dining room, her husband was asking what the hell is wrong with her and why would she even think to ask that. She was trying to justify herself when I asked them to leave. I also said that she's no longer welcomed at my house or around my children until she gets help. She started screaming that I don't deserve my life or my children and that I stole her baby from her. Her husband and mother kept apologizing to me and dragged her out of the house, still crying and screaming.
What's your most embarrassing first time getting baked story? I peed myself at work. This just happened a few hours ago and it may not be my worst F up ever, but I still feel like a grade A dumbass because of it. So I work in a warehouse and was 7 hours into my 8-hour shift when I had to go use the restroom. I thought I could wait till the end of the shift, but I'd been holding it for an hour and could feel the floodgates about to burst. I walked to the men's room, went into one of the stalls and proceeded to relieve myself. It had also been about 2 hours since my last smoke break, so I took my vape out of my pocket and took a small hit. So there I was, my meat in my left hand as I hit my vape with my right, and I thought to myself, man, it would suck if I dropped my vape in the toilet, wouldn't it? Big mistake. Right as I thought that, my vape slipped out of my hand and towards the toilet bowl while I was midstream. I panicked and let go of my meat and bent forward trying to catch it in my left hand, but all I ended up doing was smacking it into the air and getting piss everywhere in the stall. My vape hit the toilet tank and skidded across the floor into the neighboring stall while I surveyed the damage. I had pissed all over the floor, and even worse, a good chunk of the lower portion of my t-shirt and my pants. Frantically I grabbed handfuls of toilet paper and began trying to soak up the pee from my clothes. Thankfully I was wearing a black shirt and then a dark green pair of cargo pants, so once I got them mostly dry it wasn't too obvious. What was even luckier was I was the only one in the bathroom at the time. After cleaning myself up as best I could, I washed my hands, picked up my dropped vape and hucked it in the trash and did the walk of shame back to my desk. I only passed maybe 2 or 3 people on my way back and I don't think they noticed. When I got back to my desk I threw on my hoodie and it was just long enough to cover the wet spots on my pants till the shift ended. My girlfriend told me she was pregnant, and a few days later, she said she had an abortion. All as a joke. Bear with me here. I'm 27 years old and my girlfriend, it's my first serious relationship, and she's the only person I've truly loved. I mean, I really loved it. I have 4 siblings and a mother. I like my siblings, but I do not love them. And I hate my mother because she was abusive, both physically and mentally. I've never been close to them and always believed that blood relatedness doesn't obligate you to love someone. However, I knew one thing. If I ever had kids, I would love them no matter what. Becoming a dad was my most important dream. Not just a father, but a daddy. A man who would do anything for his family. Who would watch his kids take their first steps and hear their words. I just wanted to be there for them, to see and listen to them. But now I don't know if I still want it. My girlfriend told me she wanted to have kids in the future because it was her dream, too, to become a mom and have a happy family. We like to play pranks on each other, but they were innocent jokes, like doorway tape pranks or hiding a small plastic spider in a drawer. Everything happened this week. Last week was normal. There was no indication that my girlfriend was planning a prank. After I returned from work on Thursday, she sat in our living room looking concerned. I immediately noticed and sat next to her to ask what happened. She then showed me a pregnancy test and said she was pregnant. I couldn't believe it. I was overjoyed. I hugged her tightly and kissed her, although she still seemed concerned. I excitedly told her we would be parents and that although it's a big responsibility, we would manage together. She asked me not to tell anyone yet because she wanted to do it personally. I agreed, thinking she might tell her parents during our usual Sunday dinner at their house. I was the happiest man alive. I've been looking for an engagement ring, planning to propose. But now I decided to wait and buy a ring. She deserved to do it right. I was excited all day and wanted to spend all my time with her, but she wasn't in the mood. I thought it might be hormones, so I didn't push and assured her I was there if she needed anything. That night, as we went to bed and I hugged her, massaging her belly, I told her I loved her, and we would make it through. Before we fell asleep, she mentioned taking a day off from work. I told her it was fine and to call me if she felt bad. I would come home from work early to be with her. The next day, I woke up before her and went to work as usual, leaving her a note that read, "You will be a perfect mother." I texted her a few times during work to reassure her, but she didn't respond, which worried me. When I came home, she wasn't there. I called her several times without a response. I contacted her mother and sister, but they didn't know where she was either. After waiting a few hours and trying to call her many times, she finally returned home. I hugged her and asked if everything was fine, and she said yes, now everything is fine. She said we needed to talk, so we sat down, and she began to say she was afraid of being pregnant and didn't think she could be a good mother. I interrupted her, insisting she would be great, citing how she cared for her niece. She said this was different, she wasn't ready to be a mother yet, and with a small smile, she said I had an abortion. I was shocked and asked her to repeat herself. When she did, my heart broke, and I started crying, asking why you said you wanted to be a mother. I fell to my knees crying, reaching out to her stomach and asking why. I looked into her eyes and shouted, "How could you take my baby?" She regretted it but didn't answer. I screamed, "Why did you take my baby?" Then she started crying, saying it was all a prank. I cried even harder, asking if she was still pregnant, but she denied it, saying she had never been pregnant and it was supposed to be a joke. She hugged me, apologizing, saying she didn't think I would react like this. After a few minutes, I asked her why she thought it would be funny, but she couldn't answer. I pushed her away and walked out, saying I needed to be alone. She tried to stop me, but I told her to leave me alone and drove off. I stopped at a parking lot about 40 kilometers from where I live. My phone was ringing constantly. I knew it was my girlfriend, but I didn't want to talk, so I turned on airplane mode. I lay down in the car seat and fell asleep. The next day, I woke up cold and went to work. A friend noticed I was upset, but I said I had a bad night. After work, I cried again on the drive home and decided to sleep in my car, not wanting to be a burden to anyone. My phone was dead, so I lay there all day thinking about what happened. I couldn't imagine myself as a dad anymore. Every time I tried, I cried. My heart was shattered, and I didn't know what to do. Today, on Monday, I've decided to go home and talk with my girlfriend. I'll update you in the next few days. I don't know what to say to her or how I react when I see her. But one thing is clear. She's lost my trust because she knew how much being a dad meant to me. And I don't know if I can forgive her. My wife gave birth to a baby that wasn't mine. What should I do for my family? About a month back, my wife and I welcomed a baby girl into our family. However, when the baby was delivered, I was very confused. The baby was clearly not mine, as it was darker skinned than both me and my wife. I brought it up to her, after she was fine and out of the hospital, and she admitted that she cheated on me with somebody else. My wife and I are working on getting a divorce, but we're still living in the same house for now. Our 2 little boys, aged 2 and 4, are still here too. We've checked and they are definitely my biological kids, which is a relief. With the baby, our boys, and my wife losing her job due to the virus situation, we're trying our best to get along while we figure things out. I want to make it clear that I don't have any bad feelings toward the baby. Some people around us have been saying hurtful things about her skin color, and that's not right. The important thing here is that my wife made a mistake by being with someone else, not the color of the baby's skin. I'm mostly worried about our boys. Right now, they're too young to understand everything that's happening, but as they grow up, they might start to feel upset about our family changing. I really don't want them to start thinking negatively about their baby sister because of all this. It's possible they could even start acting in a mean way because of what they've heard from others. I also want to help out the kid when they get older. My wife said that she doesn't know where the baby's father is, and I don't want to have my kid's sister grow up without a father figure. What should I do about that situation? I don't know if I should step in as the kid's father figure or if I should just let things fall where they fall. So, I want my children to not blame their sister for me and my wife's divorce, but I also want to make sure that their sister's life isn't without a father.
My boyfriend accidentally hinted about us having kids one day. My boyfriend and I were laying in bed and chilling on our phones when he laughs and turns to me to show a funny meme on Reddit. It was a video of a girl with the caption "cute Minecraft-inspired baby names" or something like that, and pictures of babies with captions like clay and fermented spider eye and so on. We started laughing together and making jokes like "I'll name my baby Mossy Cobblestone" and "I'll name my baby Suspicious Stew." At some point my boyfriend said "I'll name our baby Enderman Spawn Egg," and he paused waiting for me to laugh without even noticing what he said. I chuckled and asked, "Did you say our?" He started blushing and hiding under the blanket, apologizing. Poor guy was so embarrassed, but it was so cute that he let his mind slip. To be honest, I had this innocent thought too, but I just kept it to myself.
My schizophrenic sister is homeless with my nephew. My 30-year-old schizophrenic half-sister doesn't work and neither does her husband. They were evicted a month ago and are going from couch to couch, currently staying at a hotel. Today they were out on the streets all day because they had no money for a hotel. I sent her husband a resume template to create a resume so he can apply for jobs, but he hasn't applied to a single one. My sister refuses to work like her husband. I suggested jobs like Costco, Starbucks, McDonald's, and they scoff at the idea of working at those places. My nephew is a year old and has serious medical issues. He can't walk or talk, or hold his head up. He is missing many developmental milestones and he's always crying when I'm on the phone with her. The dad will yell at him from the top of his lungs and she spanks him. 2 weeks ago they were living at a house with a girl who performed intimacy work and sold substances out of the same house. Then, they moved to her husband's cousin's crowded apartment. There were 10 other people living with them. I love my sister and my nephew, but I'm at a loss. I feel guilty, but I have thought about reporting this to CPS. I should note that she has 5 children in total, and the other 4 were taken away by CPS 2 years ago. Update: I was able to get the address of where they are staying for the next 2 days a few minutes ago. I will be calling CPS today, and I'm also going to go visit my sister in a couple of hours. I'm hoping she lets me take my nephew back home with me. A school bus picked up my kids 4 days ago. I never saw them again. I put my kids inside the bus like usual and I just went about my day like I always do. When school was over, I waited at the end of our driveway but a school bus never came. When I called the school, they said my son had never arrived. He got on the bus, I told them. There was silence. We don't doubt he got on a bus, they told me, but it wasn't one of ours. When I started freaking out, they told me I wasn't alone. The same thing had happened to 18 other children this morning and the police were on top of it. When I asked what that meant they simply said, they're working on it. They know. I keep going back to that morning trying to remember something, anything, but the same things that I remember are the reason I wasn't paying attention. The bus was yellow. It was long. It had wheels. What the fuck am I supposed to remember about a bus? The thing pulls up and you kiss your kid and that's that. 5 times a week and the routine gets so redundant a submarine might have pulled up and I'm not sure I would have noticed. 3 days ago, the parents of the missing kids got together at the rec center to put their heads together and support each other and grieve. Everyone was crying and rerunning the theories they have for days. Some of them are absolutely batshit. There wasn't any complicated thread connecting the kids, really. They were all in elementary school and lived in the same neighborhood and that was about it. Some people think the school is covering something up. Or maybe the bus company. But all the drivers are accounted for and the school's got nothing to gain. Everyone local knows about it already and some parents are keeping their kids home until this is figured out. 2 days ago, the parents received something in their mailbox. It must have come in the normal mail. In a little white envelope, there was a drawing from their child. All were of school buses exploring something different. The edge of a cliff. The bottom of the sea. A barn on fire. The thickest, blackest woods. On the back of the drawings written in cursive was the same black handwriting, neat as a crew cut. It's just a little trip. Yesterday, halfway to California the police are saying they found a field with 18 scarecrows. Each was wearing our children's clothes. At the edge of the field scratched in the mud in big letters were the lyrics. The wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round. The wheels on the bus go round and round all the way. This morning I'm standing on the curb and I've picked up smoking again and I'm waiting for the bus to come back. I've done it every day, of course, in the morning and after school. Every day, I'm twice as terrified as the last. I hear the diesel and a bus comes rolling around the corner. The bus is yellow. The bus is long. The bus has wheels. The bus has children, but none of them are mine.
Make fun of my weight? I'll run you out of my restaurant. A few months ago was another regular day at my job as hostess at a breakfast restaurant. I am a person who is on the heavier side, and my complexion doesn't help, as I have a lot of muscle mass and overall my physical aspect looks somewhere between curvy and chubby. My uniform was just a good pair of jeans, sneakers and a polo shirt with the restaurant's logo. The polo had to be tucked in our jeans during service. It wasn't the most flattering way to use the shirt for me, as it made my belly pop stand out, but I really didn't have a problem with that and neither did my workmates or clients. It was a Sunday, a busy day for the restaurant in which we had a list of about 45 minutes to 1 hour and 15 minutes. That day the cleaning lady didn't came to work as she was sick, so the chore of cleaning and organizing clutter and menus was on the hostesses. We were walking full speed through the restaurant and it was a really warm day. As a result I started sweating and it was kind of noticeable. When I had a table ready for the next people on the list, I went to the podium with the register notebook to call them. A lady that was registered, but it wasn't her turn yet approached and asked me how her turn was going. I told her that there were still about 8 tables before her and she didn't like that number and as any hostess has experienced she started with the talking of can't you make the line move faster? My family and I are hungry, you are lazy and working slowly, to which I just explained that we were working as fast as we could and that the waiting time was merely subject to how fast the clients left. She didn't like that either, because she even started raising her voice telling me things among the lines, listen to me piggy, you are working slowly because of how fat you are, you can't even do your job without sweating like the obese person you are and even maybe if you lost weight you wouldn't be so effing slow and actually do your job decently. At that point we had all the attention from all the clients in the waiting area and regulars that have appreciation for me due to how I had treated them as long as I had been there. This is where the petty thing starts. I got on character and started to make myself have a bit of teary eyes and told her that I would love to lose weight because I just wanted to do things more easily and wanted to get rid of my insecurities, but that it would have to stay as a fantasy because I had hypothyroidism and that didn't allow me to lose weight even if I was on a strict diet and a rigorous workout plan. I let 1 or 2 tears slip from my eyes as I spoke, and the regulars started to get angry at her for how she treated me and started to say all kinds of things to her to the point where she had to leave and drag her family with her out of embarrassment. I got taken to the manager's office to calm down a bit and just 5 minutes later I was out and resumed my work. It felt nice for her to get embarrassed for shaming someone about things they can't change that easily and quickly and overall things that are not wrong at all.
Want my girlfriend? Threaten me? Take my entire life while you're at it. I had a girlfriend. We were bad for each other, and unsurprisingly she was cheating on me. I found out in a rather dramatic way and had a full-on mental breakdown. The dude who she was cheating with had been fed a bunch of lies to keep him from talking to me and he started threatening me with violence. Long story short, we broke up, she moved out of our place and into his place, while I started therapy. A few months goes by and I realize in therapy that I wasn't just busted up about my ex-girlfriend, but also my whole life. I decided to find a new job, a new place to live, everything. Got the ball rolling and the day I got my new job offer I saw an email come into our jobs inbox at the company I was working for. I recognized the name as the guy who was threatening me, and now living with my cheating ex. So I referred him to my boss. Talked about how great he was, I'd only heard good things, and hey, because I was putting in my 2 weeks they should definitely hire him. Dude comes in for an interview, I'm on the panel. When we're in the room together alone he's like, dude, I'm sorry bro for all of the things I said, thank you so much for helping me out. I say no sweat, she always had good things to say about you and I know that she is a good picker, after all she chose both of us, and we chuckled like polite people. He actually does okay in the interview and gets the job. The thing is, that job was awful. I'm not exaggerating when I say that it is the worst job I ever had. The place that I was moving to was paying twice as much for a third of the work. I was so relieved to be leaving. When I moved out of my place a month later my landlord asked if I knew anyone who was looking. Gave her the guy's phone number. That apartment was charming when you first saw it. However, as soon as you start living there, you realize it was absolute trash. Bugs, mice, an overall bad smell, it had it all, but you didn't know that until you were living there. My buddy from my old job told me he got the call for it at work and jumped on it. So I knew he had my old crappy job, my old crappy place, and my old cheating girlfriend. He basically had my entire old crappy life. I hope he enjoyed my life more than I did, but somehow I doubt it. I do know that they broke up about 2 months later. My delusional wife keeps flashing her boobs so I gave her a taste of her own medicine. My wife and I have been together for 11 years, married for just over 5 years. Ever since I met her in college, she has been insecure about her appearance, specifically her body. When we got our first jobs out of college and became financially stable, she approached me and asked how I felt about her getting a honker job. I wasn't a huge fan of the idea. I told her I loved her how she is and that I didn't think she needed one, I just think they look oddly perky and not natural, and I've dated women in the past with varying chest size and would prefer a woman with flat boobs compared to someone with fake ones. But knowing how much it has bothered her, I told her I would support her decision either way, but I wish I never did. After thinking about it for a while, she approached me again to ask if I was still serious with my answer and that she was going to proceed with the operation. I wasn't sure how to feel about it at first. I thought about talking her out of it, but wanted to stand by my original answer and support her either way. So she did get a honker job. Her surgeon was fantastic and things did end up looking very good considering my prior opinion. The problem I've had is ever since she got her honker job, it's definitely made her put them on display. She went from wearing baggy and unrevealing clothing to very tight and revealing shirts with a lot of cleavage. I'm not enjoying the fact that she is willing to show people her bare breasts. It's no secret to anyone that has known her for a long time that she got a honker job. At first, it was mostly her just showing her girlfriends, which was still weird to me but didn't really cross a boundary for me. However, it's almost as if the more and more she's shown them off and gotten validation, the more and more enabled she is to continue doing it. The first time it crossed a boundary for me was when we were at a friend's house for dinner and drinks, and she had a little too much to drink and showed her girlfriend her breasts while her girlfriend's husband was standing right there. She pulled her breasts open in front of everyone sitting on the table. While driving back home I confronted her about her actions but she just replied by saying, "Don't you want to show everyone how great my new guns are?" I realized that she was still drunk and decided to wait until we got home. The next morning I tried to set boundaries with her but she accused me of controlling her and started crying. I thought that maybe this was a one-time thing, but I was wrong. Most recently, we were at a friend's house with many other mutual friends watching a football game, and she got drunk again. Upon our team scoring, she lifted her shirt and flashed her breasts at the entire party while jumping up and down in celebration. She's not even a football fan and hardly understands who to cheer for. To me it was like an excuse to just show off her breasts to everyone. I had enough and we had an argument again. She got defensive and turned it around on me, saying that for once in her life she's happy with how she looks and she just wants to feel good about herself. Arguing with her was pointless but there was still one way to fix this situation. The next week when we went for a family dinner with her parents, I decided to do what she does, thinking that she would understand how I felt. While her siblings and parents were eating, I stood up and flashed my pee-pee. Everyone stared at me with shock. My wife started screaming for me to cover up and told her parents that we were leaving. On the drive back home she asked me why the F would you do that? I told her because I feel good about my pee-pee and want everyone to know about it, just like you want everyone to know about your breasts. She broke down in the car and tried to explain how men always want to see boobs while girls aren't so obsessed. I had enough of her bullshit. And told her that the next time she flashes her breasts, I'm going to flash my pee-pee. Just found out my late grandpa would play video games while my cousin and I weren't there when we were little, so that we would have more in-game money when we would come over. My grandparents had a laptop at their house that we were allowed to play video games on, which was a big deal for my cousin and I, because neither of us really had computers that we were allowed to play games on at home. Every Wednesday, when we would go over to their house for dinner, my cousin and I would go into the office and play video games together on the computer. The games we were playing weren't that complicated, think Webkins, Pop Tropica, that kind of thing, and we were young, maybe from the age of 6 to 10, but practically every Wednesday the ritual was the same: eat dinner, escape into the office, and play video games. Our grandpa loved playing them with us. He didn't do everything with us, but whenever there was a difficult level, a hard puzzle, or even technical issues, he would always come back to the office and was happy to help us. He was the one that set up those accounts for us, and he kept the passwords in his fireproof safe in case we ever lost or forgot them. But today I found out from the same cousin, who only just found out from his mom, my aunt, that whenever we would be gone for the rest of the week, he would spend his free time each evening playing those little mini games that earn virtual money within the games we played, just so when we came back we would have extra money to spend in the game. Now keep in mind that he worked a 9 to 5 job, and though he was always around enough, it's not like he was retired and trying to find ways to kill time. We were young, and I'm absolutely sure that we never noticed, but I'm also sure we took full advantage of the magical currency that would appear in our inventory when we would get there on Wednesday evening. Our grandpa died 3 years ago next Saturday, and Christmas is always hard because it was the time of year where he absolutely lit up as a person and went all out in terms of decorations, gifts, etc. I know he cared about us and loved us, but this little gesture that I had absolutely no idea about makes his memory so much better. I miss him like hell. I threw a low blow at my wife, and now she's barely talking to me. Please help. My wife Ali and I have been together for 6 years and married for 3. We met in college, and at first, my mom, who was always a Som, was worried that my wife wouldn't make a good housewife. However, as the years went on, she saw how my Ali and I made a beautiful partnership. She saw how we supported each other through college/grad school, job hunting, financial issues, health problems, and more. She saw how I would pick up the slack when Ali was busy and how Ali did the same for me. We also split our chores at home. My mom now absolutely adores her. Since I only have brothers, and I'm the only married one, she thinks of her as the daughter she never had. The issue is, this past Monday, I was just having a terrible day. Those where everything goes wrong. I got a flat tire on my way to work, was late to work, my boss yelled at me, I dropped my lunch, and left my wallet at home. It was just an awful day. I got home and was starving. Ali was cooking dinner. She seemed to have been anxious because when she starts talking a lot and really fast, which I normally find sweet and endearing but not that day. So she starts going on and on about her day. I just wanted her to get done with dinner. So, out of nowhere, I just yelled. Do you ever just shut up? Boy, was Mom ever right. She asks right about what? Instead of keeping my mouth shut, I tell her about my mom's concerns about her not making a good housewife. Her eyes welled up with tears, and she stopped talking, finished cooking dinner, went straight to the shower, and then bed. Now, she wakes up before me and leaves breakfast and lunch ready, comes home and leaves dinner ready, and goes straight to shower and bed. She doesn't want to talk or watch TV or anything. If I ask or say anything, she gives me 1 or 2 word responses. She doesn't even look angry at me, just defeated. I don't know how to fix this. I feel like flowers and chocolates won't cut it here. Plus, I don't even know why I said that because my mom doesn't even have those concerns anymore. Please help. Update, Ali is not pregnant. Before getting married, we decided to wait until our careers were established for 2 years before we started trying for a baby. That will be next year. We are both very careful. Plus, I asked and she said she wasn't. Her doing all the chores, she does not do all the chores. Before we moved in together, we made a list of all the chores that needed to be done. Then we flipped a coin and chose the chore we wanted, then we alternated on choosing the rest of them. She chose the first one, which was cooking. She cooks and I clean the kitchen. She shops for groceries, I put the groceries away, and so on. So, even with the fight, she kept doing her chores, and I kept doing mine. Although I would fully understand if she stopped doing them altogether. I did try to apologize multiple times, but she said she didn't want to hear it. I just wanted to give her space but should have tried harder. I 1000% got what I deserved. Now, on to what I've done to begin fixing this mess I've made. I wrote a heartfelt letter explaining myself and sincerely apologizing and begging her to speak to me whenever she felt comfortable. She said she would go to the guest room, and I said no, that I would go there because this fight was entirely my fault and would only return if when she allowed me felt comfortable. I called my mom and let her know what I did. She rightfully tore me a new one. Then came the next day with some gifts for Ali. She apologized for ever feeling that way and assured her that she didn't feel that way now. That she truly loves her like a daughter. They spoke more, but I wasn't privy to that conversation. As some of you suggested, I made an appointment with a counselor so I can learn how to properly deal with my anger and not lash out at innocent people. I also printed out a list of marriage counselors in the area who accept our health insurance. I gave her the list and said that if she's willing to go with me, all she has to do is choose a name, and I'll do all the legwork. She said she's willing to go, and she chose a name. She works in the mental health field and chose someone who is reputable in our area. She already sees her own therapist and is working through this with her, I assume. I was able to talk to her, and she said she was really hurt by what I said. That she was questioning what my family, especially my mom, and what I thought of her as a wife and a person. Like all the memories with my family are tainted now. Were they pretending? Was it just my mom? What are they saying behind her back during special occasions? If we have kids, will they think she's a bad mom, too? When my mom helps her with something, is it to be nice or because she thinks she's not capable? She was angry that I didn't trust her with those concerns earlier in the relationship, so she could either address them with my mom or even see what I thought as well, because she might have made a different choice about marrying into a family that had doubts about her. She also said that she was already anxious about a hard day at work. She works in the mental health field, which can be stressful, and I yelled out of nowhere. She told me that if I had just communicated to her that I had a bad day and was hungry, she would have just made me a snack and told me to chill while dinner was ready, but instead I just lashed out. Or if I had texted her earlier, she would have ordered me lunch or given me her card number so I could order something for myself. Also said it was about teaching me a lesson about what a quiet housewife looks like and that it's obviously not something I want. And that if it is, she's obviously not someone I'm going to get it from. So, to make a choice about what I want. I told her I just want to be with her. I don't want a housewife, I want her as my partner for the rest of our lives. I just felt like a complete ass because I just had to communicate, and she would have been there for me. I had no right to hurt her. She was a partner, and I was a PP. I have also been taking over her chores, as well as I can because my cooking is definitely not as good as hers, and spoiling her with her favorite things and foods. I'm spoiling her even more than she spoils me since she loves giving little just because / thinking of you gifts and doing sweet things to make my life easier. I've also been doing things like drawing baths, serving her favorite juice, lighting candles, and playing her favorite crime podcast so she can relax when she comes home from work. She even asked me to join her in the last bath. She said she was glad we were working on things. No promises, but we'll keep working together and see what happens. I obviously effed up here. I'm still trying to fix it, and I'm hopeful. It's not all unicorns and rainbows, but I'm going to do whatever it takes to repair and rebuild what I ruined. If it ends up not working, then I'll know it's because I was a big a-hole who didn't properly communicate and didn't keep his mouth shut. My husband is angry I need surgery. As the title says, my husband and I have been together 15 years, house, kids the whole lot. I need a surgery to repair some nerve and artery damage to my arm or else I'm going to lose the use of that arm and my husband is not happy about it. It's not even about money, public health care, or that he's scared / worried. No, he's pissed because I will need time off work. We own a company together as equals, and he will need to adjust his days to work around our school-aged kids while I recover. He's stomping around and slamming doors like a child, all pissy that his schedule will be affected and won't even talk to me about the surgery. I'm so stressed about his reaction and all the things I'll have to do at home instead of recovery because he said he won't pick up my slack that I'm just thinking stuff it, no surgery and just wait till I can't use my arm anymore and at least I'll get funded home help for the housework and kids when that happens and try to adjust to a new lifestyle. But you would think after this long and building a life together he would have some ability to show me a bit of support. It's not like I'm doing this on purpose just to ruin his plans or something. I'd prefer not to have surgery too, but I have kinda grown fond of having two functional arms. So good people of Reddit, what advice do you have? I think my husband is being a complete see you next Tuesday about this, but should I try to be more understanding of the stress he would be under?
My parents wanted me to take back and forgive my fiancé for cheating on me, so I crushed their hearts with my final farewell and congratulated them on the loss of their last remaining child. I was to be married in July. 2 months ago, I returned from a work trip to find my ex-fiancé in bed with my best friend's sister. I kicked him out, canceled the wedding, warned him I would get rid of his stuff if he didn't get it all, then weeks later dumped it all on the curbside with a free sign, sold or donated or dumped everything he gave me, and pawned the ring. I blocked him everywhere. I called the cops on him when he showed up banging on my door, called them again when he turned up at my workplace and made a scene, and called them on his family when they showed up en masse to plead his case. I didn't go scorched earth on my ex-best friend's sister. I did tell her husband I caught her in bed with my ex. Last I heard, she'd been kicked out of the house and was back living with her parents. Ex-BFF tried talking me into giving them both a chance to explain, then got angry at me for ruining her sister's relationship and called me petty and cold-hearted. So I kicked her to the curb, too. I don't want dishonest people who are blasé about betrayal in my life. This encounter no doubt simmered under my skin until I unleashed on my parents. Maybe that's why it lingered. I was so harsh with them. Last week, I met my parents for dinner. I took a date to the restaurant, hoping his presence would ease any discussion about my failed engagement. My parents have been pressuring me to work things out with my ex. He's so sorry. I owe it to him to talk with him, give him 5 minutes to explain himself. She meant nothing to him, he made a mistake. I'm cruel for shutting him out the way I have. How could I call the police on him? How could I do the same to his family? His parents? They're good people, they didn't deserve to be humiliated in that manner. He's having a rough time. He's depressed. Everybody is worried about him. He loves me, really loves me. He's learned his lesson. It's time to grow up and forgive him. No, my date's presence didn't stop them from bringing it all up again. I lost my cool. I asked my father if he expected me to give my ex a pass every time he sticks his DCK into anything that moves like he does. I asked my mother how turning a blind eye to her husband's infidelity works for her. How does she hold her head up while having lunch with women who have slept around with her husband for years? Is that the kind of man, the life she wants for me and my sister? For her daughters? I asked if they had any idea of knowledge's impact on me and my siblings growing up. Knowing that dad was late home from work because he was screwing his secretary. Knowing work weekend was code for a dirty weekend with a woman, not our mother. Did they not understand why it was that of their 4 children? I am the only one who still talks to them. Do they not question why they were not invited to my brother's weddings? Why have they never met either of my brother's wives and children? Do they think my sister's silence is because she's being dramatic and throwing a tantrum? Really? I stood from the table, congratulated them on the loss of their last remaining child, and told them I hoped their arrogance, willful blindness, and misery would comfort them to their last breaths. Then I left. My date, I should have saved him for a proper date rather than a F you to my parents. He took me to the nearest bar, let me cry on his shoulder while I proceeded to get poop-faced, and then made sure I got home safely. The next day, he messaged me to see if I was alive and sent a double cheeseburger, large fries, and a large Sprite over with DoorDash. I didn't block my parents, but I have not heard from them. It's been a week, and I've calmed down enough to feel regret. Not for what I said but because I could see the looks on their faces when I made my final farewell. I crushed them and hurt them, especially my mother. Despite their faults, and there are many, I love my parents. I don't like knowing I hurt them. I'm feeling a lot of guilt about it.
Girls, what are hints you give that guys never understand? When I was about 16-17, my friend's parents went away. I had a massive crush on this guy, and one night he invited me and another female friend round to watch a film with him and his friend. I had my plan set up and it was going better than expected when my friend and his friend started kissing and went outside for some air. I said I was hot and asked the guy I had a crush on would he mind if I took my top off. He just said no, go for it, and then carried on watching the film. I then asked if he could show me where the bathroom is. We went upstairs and he pointed at it. I went for it and said, "Which bedroom is yours?" And he again pointed, so I went in and sat on his bed. He still didn't take the hint and just said, "Hurry up in the toilet so we can finish watching the film." A good 10 years later he messaged me on Facebook and said he just realized
I'm crazy about this guy I've been seeing, but he told me he was convicted for murder. I, 28 female, met this guy, 31 male, on a dating app a little over a month ago. He had interesting hobbies, specifically stated he wasn't looking for hookups and he was handsome in that brooding kind of way. We talked and hit it off really well. He was funny and polite and showed interest in what I had to say and even did some research on some of the things I said about a hobby he knew nothing about. Not in a pushy way. He just wanted to understand better. There was very little flirting and it seemed like he was serious about taking it slow. I was too. And everything was going great, so eventually we met up for coffee. Coffee date goes really well. Like, really well. He looks exactly like on his profile, which admittedly I've been wary about, and he's funny and charming and smart and doesn't take himself too seriously, and he was engaged with what I said too. You know that thing where you're interested in what someone has to say, and then you have a question? But then you don't ask that question because you're interested and you've been listening and you work out the answer for yourself, but then you have another question that you can't work out and you ask that question instead. He was doing that and it just made me feel, I don't know, just hurt? My past relationships were different and I got brushed off a lot because I can get excited and really into something and I ramble on. They told me that was weird and told me to stop. Then I felt bad about myself for doing so, but this guy didn't do that at all. He was into it and asked questions. Anyway, it was a great date. Afterwards we went for a walk because neither of us wanted the date to end, I think, and we walked by a canal where a bird like a duck and its little chicks were swimming about. It wasn't a duck, but I don't know what the English word is. He pointed them out and pretty much melted at how cute they were. It was adorable to see his reaction. So all that to say, he seemed like a really kind and cool person and someone I already felt I was falling for. By the end of the date, he asked whether he could kiss me. I said yes and he did. Just a light kiss. We continued to text and occasionally call afterwards and had a second date a week later. It was at a restaurant that he had suggested. I texted I wasn't sure what to wear and he said I should wear whatever I felt most comfortable in. It wasn't a fancy restaurant, but then also add the silliest thing I had. I said, "What about you?" He replied, "Yes, what about me?" And I told him I'd do it if he also did it. He agreed. We met up at the restaurant and I wore a dress with a print on it that made it look like an apple core. He showed up with a button-down shirt and a blazer. And giant purple carnival glasses. Whatever they're called. He refused to take them off the entire night because I couldn't take my dress off either, so that wouldn't be fair. This date went great too. I won't bore you with more details, but I think it's important to really show how he acted and how nice he was and stuff. We kept texting and calling afterwards. For our third date, we went to a local foods event where lots of wagons and vans were lined up in the street and gave our free samples of food and drinks. We went for a walk and sat down on a bench and he said he had something important to tell me, namely that he had been in prison for 6 years for taking the lives of 2 people. This obviously came as a shock to me because nothing in his behavior had led me to believe something like that was possible. He said several times he had been convicted of taking those lives, but never said whether he actually did them or not. He was specifically not saying he was innocent either though. He just said it was something he had been convicted for and had been in prison for. It was something from his past and that's where he wanted it to stay. He would not give any details about it, not then and not at any later point, and he had never told anyone else more details either and never would. I could look up news articles and stuff if I wanted to. He didn't care about that. I asked why he only told me now because that's information I'd like to know ASAP. He said, if I took the lives of 2 people on my dating profile, would you have swiped right? And, no, I definitely would not have. He said he didn't want the first impression of him to be that he had been convicted. Nobody would give him a chance, but he understood too that it's not something he could keep a secret because it wouldn't be fair to others. That's why he had waited until the third date. I'd gotten to know him a little and wasn't in too deep yet. Now I could make a good choice. If I wanted nothing to do with him anymore, he would understand. He didn't put any pressure on me and appeared genuine about what he was saying. I still felt really uncomfortable about what I'd learned. I tried not to show it, but clearly I didn't do a good job of it. I asked a few questions about his past and he answered some of them, but nothing about the lives he took. He wasn't evasive, but just said that he wouldn't answer like he had said earlier. It's not like he got irritated or anything though. I think he was trying to make an effort to be open with me, but I don't know. We eventually said goodbye and it was a bit awkward. He said if I didn't want anything to do with him anymore, he'd understand. I replied I needed time to think about it and he said of course. I still texted him when I got home safe, because he asked, which I guess is a bit ironic. I looked up his name and I found some old news articles that he'd been convicted for taking 2 lives and sent to prison. It was longer than 6 years, but I guess he got out earlier. I couldn't find anything about that. They were apparently related to gangs, but that's all I got. By the way, I am not in the US. It's been a few days now and he hasn't contacted me. He said he'd wait for me to message him first to give me all the space and time I needed. I'm not planning on ghosting him, but I don't know what to do. Obviously he really was in prison for taking the 2 lives because the news articles are there. He said that's in the past, but is that really true? And can I trust someone who has done this, if he's actually done this? But with all this evidence and his attitude about it, I believe he probably did. On the other hand, if he didn't do it, I don't know. He's really been so nice and kind to me. Like a perfect guy to me. And I guess he's right that there's more to him than just his conviction, and maybe I shouldn't let that make my decision. I really liked him. Like head over heels. I still do, but now I wonder if that's really him? I don't know what to do. Is it worth the risk? Are there any other questions I could ask him? Is there even a way to make myself calmer with this? I really don't want to stop seeing him, but I also feel anxious, of course. Is it best to just leave him alone? Help.
I finally ended it with my narcissistic cheating boyfriend. I, 22F, had been with my ex, 23M, for about a year. The last couple of months of our relationship I started to suspect he was cheating on me. Like all narcissists, he denied it, deflected everything, and made me feel like crap for even questioning him. I'm usually a very considerate person when it comes to people's feelings and privacy, so at first I didn't push too much and decided to trust what he says. He even offered to let me look through his messages to see there's nothing there, but I said no. Because this made me feel like he's being honest, and it also would have made me feel uneasy that we stooped to that point. Some time went by and some more serious, undeniable evidence came up about his cheating, but he still kept gaslighting me the same way. This time he refused showing me his phone. At this point I realized 2 things. 1, we needed to break up. 2, he's never gonna tell me the truth. This is the part where I did something I'm not proud of, and in a way, I cheated too by showing a complete disregard for his privacy. I stayed with him like everything was fine, just so I could use the times he left his phone unattended to go through it. I felt like I needed to know the truth about the things that have happened to be able to move on. I felt like I needed some explanation, because he kept telling me I'm the love of his life and really acted like that too when we were together. So it was like a punch in the gut when I realized he wasn't faithful, like I couldn't even wrap my head around it at first. I remember the first time I found out about stuff. I was physically shaking with my whole body for an hour and couldn't stop. I was in shock. So what did I find on his phone? He was basically lying to me throughout the whole year we've spent together. He cheated on me multiple times, with random girls, and he also regularly hung out with his ex-GF during the times he told me he was at school, or that he went home to see his family. He also had unprotected with his ex that he didn't tell me about, even though I begged him previously that if he did anything like that, he has to let me know for health reasons. So in a way I'm glad I became aware of the fact that I should see a doctor for some checkups. I know what I did is effed up, and I am in therapy to work through the trust issues this asshole just gave me. By going through those messages I saw a side of him I never even imagined could have existed. And by the way, I never told him I did this, and that I know about everything. He already knew I didn't trust him, so in my mind that was enough reason to give him one breaking up. Maybe it's just me coping, but in hindsight it was kind of funny seeing him look me in the eyes and still lie to my face even though I knew the truth. And it's also sad that I would have never done something like this in the past. Crazy how being close with bad people kind of turns you into a bad person too. My boyfriend violated the only boundary I ever gave him. This happened 4 days ago. Quick backstory, 23F 26 meters. We've been together a year and a half, known each other for 2. Before we even started having sex I made it extremely clear that he could never finish in me, and if he did then we would never be having sex again. I was in birth control in high school and my body reacted extremely poorly to it and I will never go on it again. He told me that he was perfectly fine with being responsible for the birth control aspect. It's not even about getting pregnant, I just don't like the way it feels, physically and all the other ways. He also recently started a new job where he travels for work. When he got back to the house from work I was already there waiting for him. I've been staying at his place for the past couple weeks just to see him more since he's been working more. I was in the kitchen making dinner for the both of us like I always did since he started traveling, candles, flowers, music, etc. He didn't even say hi to me, he just came on to me the second he saw me like I was a piece of meat. I thought he was being sweet, like there's nothing wrong with a kiss hello, but it wasn't that. He was being really aggressive and we hadn't even been kissing for 10 seconds before he flipped me around really harshly and pulled my pants down. I'm not going into detail but it was so aggressive and rough, and at one point he slammed my face down into the kitchen counter and held my head there. I was so shocked by him being so aggressive because he's never ever like this ever. He's a really nerdy skinny guy, his apartment looks like a library, he's not ever dominant in bed and I'm pretty sure he was a virgin before I met him. Just to give an idea, that I didn't even ask if he was wearing protection. I literally couldn't say anything because I didn't even know what was happening until it was over. I obviously felt that he finished in me and I turned around and asked him if he did and he just looked at me. I was still pretty freaked out and kinda scared. Honestly, I walked away from him to the bathroom to try and compose and clean myself. I didn't want to be at his place anymore, and I also wanted to go pick up a plan B from the medicine store ASAP. When I was leaving, he kept apologizing and saying he was sorry and he's just tired and he just missed me and all this stuff, and kept begging me not to leave and to hear him out and all this stuff, and I was crying at this point because I was still confused on what just happened. He was literally standing at the door blocking me from leaving, saying he was sorry and he didn't mean to and all this. I ended up leaving and taking care of my stuff, but I haven't been back there or spoken to him since. He's calling and texting me every second of the day saying he's sorry, and I hate that I really do believe he's sorry. He's the sweetest person ever and he's never aggressive or anything like he just was, and I'm just so hurt by everything. I literally gave him one single boundary and the rest was free game, and he couldn't even do that. And it's not even like he didn't understand, because I physically could not have made it more clear that I am not okay with him finishing inside me. Not only that, but I spent all this time setting up a cute dinner date for us since we hadn't seen each other in a couple days and didn't even get to finish it. I don't even know if I want to reply to him ever, because I still feel so disgusting and violated. I just feel really bad for ignoring him because I really do believe that he's sorry, but I feel like I shouldn't, and the thought of seeing him again makes me feel queasy.
Today I effed up by accidentally losing the only copy of my wife and I's proposal video. I feel like crap. We had this lame proposal video from when I couldn't help but propose to her the moment I got the ring. It was in her apartment after she got home from work. There was a romantic Mucinex commercial playing in the background as I got on one knee and asked her to marry me. All she said was, "Oh crap." I filmed it on my old GoPro. We only watched the video like one time and I kept meaning to back it up somewhere. Anyway, it's been 7 years and I got the urge to find the video and I can't. I'm not the type to delete things. I have videos from around that time, but damn if I can find that effing video. I've pulled out every external hard drive and memory device I can think of. I've searched through the cloud. Nothing. Not a damn thing. I effed up. I don't know what to do. I mean, they say the average marriage lasts 7 years before divorce. I guess it's time.
My boyfriend threw a tantrum because I would never consider having a child out of wedlock. I may have my first ever case of the ick. Listen, I am aware that this is as backwards as they come and that to most everyone marriage is nothing, but to me it is everything. I cannot adequately explain it. I am not religious, though my family is. I am not traditional in any other part of my life. I drink, I smoke, I have intimate relations out of wedlock, fairly often. But to me, marriage is important when it comes to children. I do not believe this is the case for everyone, but for me it is. I would never have children out of wedlock, not because I believe that it is wrong or bad, but maybe because I know I wouldn't be able to cut it as a single mother. I need a partnership, and before anyone makes the argument that my boyfriend has made recently, and repeatedly, yes, I know divorces exist, yes I know he could still disappear at any time, yes, I know it would not stop a bad person from hurting me, but it is still something I personally believe in. I was very upfront with him about this, the first time we discussed children, marriage and the future. He claimed he wanted children, but wasn't sure about marriage. I explained my side, and told him that I didn't mind having or not having children. I could see my life going well either way, but I understood if he saw the need to leave after hearing that, and I wouldn't blame him. We were less than 6 months in at that time, and I figured it was better to be open and honest about it than to try to hide behind maybes. He said he would think about it, and never brought it up again since. It's been years since that discussion, and recently I had to have my IUD removed for a small period of time, due to outside health reasons I'd rather not get into. And for the entire time I was unprotected, he was practically pushing me into bed. I refused because I don't like taking chances, even with the promise of protection. It's just too easy for one to break. After I had my new IUD put in, he asked me about children, and I reiterated that I wouldn't be having them outside of wedlock. He asked if I was really serious, and asked what I would do if I got pregnant and we weren't married. I didn't even have time to answer verbally before he started freaking out, screeching like a damn animal and asking if I would kill a baby over a ring. I pretty much shut down after that, and just packed a bag to stay literally anywhere else for a while, all while he was still screaming and pulling on his hair like a child having a tantrum about something he's known about me for literal years, acting like I pulled some bait and switch when I've never been anything but honest. I have never felt such a bone-deep disgust than I do towards him right now. I could hardly look at him before leaving. He started calling me, texting me, Facebook messaging me, Snapchatting me, any and every way to contact me, mostly apologizing, but asking if I would really do that. I have only sent him one message back so far, which was to tell him to leave me alone. We would talk about it after I calmed down. It's been nearly a week, and I've enlisted my brothers to help me go get my crap from his place, within the next couple days. While I'm there I'll tell him officially we are over, because I genuinely am disgusted looking at him after the absolute hissy fit he threw over something that had been clearly, openly, and honestly conveyed to him before we were even serious. He never had to marry me, I never asked for a proposal, and he needs to learn to listen instead of hearing whatever the heck he wanted to hear.
My son got intimate with our dog. Our family had dinner and did our usual nighttime stuff. My wife and I watched TV. Son was in his room after dinner like all teenagers are, and the dog, obviously, was with me. I waited for my wife to go to bed, which felt like forever because I was so nervous, but she finally did about an hour ago, and I went into my son's room to have the talk. I basically said, listen, I noticed the dog has been acting weird. I took him to the vet. I found out someone has sodomized him, Any ideas what might have happened? I looked at my son and he seemed ever so slightly nervous but pretended to know nothing about it. I expected this, so I brought up the sites I found on his computer. Naturally, this made him pretty upset and he got really indignant at the thought that I snooped around on his computer. Fair enough, I get it. But I got him back to the point and tried to be as understanding and fatherly as I could and just told him that whatever happened I am not going to judge him and he's not going to be punished, I just need to know the truth. After about 15 minutes of this he finally breaks down and admits that he put the handle of a hairbrush into the dog a few times during a day last week. He said he wasn't trying to hurt him and he stopped when the dog at one point freaked out. He said he didn't think he hurt it that bad and he was too embarrassed to tell us or do anything about it. Believed him in this, but he also didn't give a very satisfactory answer as to why exactly he would do this in the first place. I have to admit, either way, I was glad on some level to hear that he wasn't actually having intimacy with the dog. So basically, we agreed that I wouldn't tell his mom, but that we would find a reason to tell her that he needs to see a therapist for a bit. I know I told him I wouldn't tell his mother, but the more I think about all of this the more I think I may eventually have to go back on that promise. As for now, the dog is staying with the family, and obviously I made him swear up and down that he will not touch the dog like that again under threat of severe consequences. It's too early to tell if he feels remorse or is just humiliated. It's hard to say. It was very uncomfortable for both of us, but especially my son. I'm sure we can all imagine. Today I located a therapist that specializes in teenagers. I made a preliminary appointment for my son to go in and talk to her. I disclosed to her some of the issues, without getting into too much detail. For now my son does not know this, but it will be helpful for her to have some idea of what we're dealing with. My dog is still not in the best of spirits, but seems to be making progress. I went for a walk with him today and he was more playful than he has been the past week. I've been trying to be extra good to him as well and the love seems to be helping slowly bring the happiness back into his eyes. Nurses, what happened when the born child was obviously not the father's? I worked labor and delivery. Had a very young mother come in, accompanied by her parents. She was just 12 to 13 and parents looked stuffy and kept telling her should have had an abortion. She was too young, etc. Her mother was silent the whole time but leaked tears for her constantly. While she labored, I received a call from a very young boy who said he was her boyfriend. His trembly voice explained that her father wouldn't come to the hospital. I explained that I couldn't give out information but he could talk to her afterward. I went in, told her he had called and she showed me a picture of him. He was white, straight red hair, pimply and tiny, the run of the litter. About an hour later, her phys ed teacher stopped by to check on her, which I thought was odd. We didn't get many teachers checking on students. He was as opposite of the boyfriend as he could get, tall, very muscular, beautiful smile, and rich, chocolate brown skin. The girl's father accompanied her to the delivery room. Odd, but okay. The more she pushed, the louder she cried. In between, she kept saying sorry daddy. Finally, out slid a very beautiful, chocolate brown baby boy. I thought her father was going to pass the fuck out on my delivery room floor. I did my usual "it's a boy," and said nothing else. I handed him off to a nursery nurse and got dad a chair. The new mom said "I'm sorry daddy," over and over again. Her mom, now frowned up, came to see the baby, took one look, started asking God for forgiveness, and left. I sent her dad home a short bit later, admonishing him to react at home, not here. I set up a time for our counselor to meet with him before I left. After talking to new mom, she admitted her gym teacher had been giving her special treatment. I explained sex to her and she said she'd only kissed the BFF, but had stayed after school to be with her gym teacher. I'm state mandated to report child abuse, so I did. 2 weeks later, with her world shattered, her baby was given up for adoption. What stranger will you never forget? I was waiting for my appointment with an optometrist when an old Haitian man walked in with the grocery bags. The receptionist knew him, so he walked up to me and proceeded to ask me riddles. When I finally got the answer to one, he reached into his bag and gave me a Snickers, then left. To this day I'm really curious as to what would motivate a man to become a wholesome riddler. The gentleman in a business suit handing me his umbrella in the middle of a downpour. We just were passing each other on the sidewalk. Our eyes met and he just handed over the umbrella with a "here you go." Never saw him again. I was going home from work at night and a random guy walks up to me and asked if he may ask a question. I said yes. It was a bit strange. In the middle of the night, he took out his phone and showed me a picture of a woman and wanted to know if I think she was pretty. I said sure, she was beautiful. She really was. He thanked me, said he will tell her that, because she often thinks she is not that pretty. We wished each other a good night and that was it. People who have been with a sociopath, what's your story? Clinical psych grad student here. There are going to be a lot of sensationalized responses here that paint a picture of sociopaths, antisocial personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder that is violent and demented. The reality is that sociopaths, just like mentally healthy people, come in all shapes and sizes. Violent tendencies can exist but aren't necessarily advantageous for people. Many sociopaths end up becoming successful doctors, lawyers, and politicians, and most of them do not commit acts of violence or overt aggression. And yes, I was romantically involved with a sociopath. Ultimately, being with him felt like I had been thrown into rapids. I felt disoriented, confused, and betrayed after every serious conversation about his treatment of me. Somehow, it was my fault for criticizing him too much. He refused to apologize and claimed that wanting an apology for mistreatment was manipulation on my part. I told him once that being with him felt like he was holding me by the throat over a great precipice. I didn't want to hold on to him, but if I let go, I feared that I would fall. He had constructed a world around me in which my reality was no longer real, in which I was never the victim but the ungrateful charity case, and in which he was constantly inventing new ways to torment me psychologically and intimidate me physically. The tumult, the rapids, were ultimately a script of rapidly oscillating states of being. He would apologize and promise he would change. He would cry and beg for me not to leave him. If I tried to make him leave, he would pivot to threats or demean me. Everything happened on his terms, even if it didn't seem that way. Outwardly, he appeared to be a patient, kind, and charismatic partner. He was conventionally attractive, intellectually gifted, and socially adored. His views on life were reasonable and measured, and his style of rhetoric is, to this day, one of the most engaging and convincing of anyone I'd ever known. The acts of cruelty and humiliation were rare at first, growing to a crescendo during times in my life when I was the most vulnerable. I lost my best friend, the abuse escalated. I got a new job and it declined. I left my job and it escalated. I found a new job and there we were, back to celebrating again. When he was good, he was so good. I would start to believe that I must have just been too hard on him. After all, things only got bad when I was already doing poorly, managing grief, loss, and depression. When I was succeeding, he was succeeding with me. So it seemed reasonable to me, for a while, that he was right when he said I was just projecting my inner turmoil onto him. I believed him for a while. But that mask just can't stay on. Eventually things were too good for too long, and he couldn't have that. He always needed to be one step ahead of me. He always needed to have the upper hand. And he always needed to use it to drag me to the edge of the abyss and hold me over, while I desperately clutched and grabbed at the arm that held me, begging him not to let go. I know now that this is typical of narcissistic abusers. I know now that his moves were calculated and methodical. I know that he hit me when I was already down because it was the easiest to manipulate my worldview during those times, and to create a dynamic in which I was so afraid to lose him amongst the other losses that I would forgive him for whatever he had done, even if what he had done was slowly bore a hole into me, removing pieces of myself that I had left defenseless to exploit. I tried to leave him 10 times. It took me 9 months after the abuse first started to get out, 6 after the first serious event started to unravel. I didn't think that sort of thing could happen to me because, well, I had studied this sort of thing. I knew these signs academically. I was so certain I'd recognize them. I am a strong, outspoken, and almost aggressively independent person, someone you would think incapable of victimizing. But there I was. It happened to me. And in it having happened, I understand now how truly insidious abuse is. I understand why women can't or don't leave. I understand why I was so wrong to think they were weak for not fighting or running away. If an abuser is smart, like my partner, they don't just break you down. It doesn't happen all at once. Instead, you become eroded. You are contorted and compromised so slowly you don't realize what is happening until you've already been ensnared. He never had to lay a single hand on me to be the single worst experience of my entire life. He didn't have to hit me even once to make me afraid of him, alienated from my own body, and distanced from my true sense of self. Beyond the obvious words of wisdom I am sure most people will impart in this thread, I'd just like to leave you with this: if you're still with me, I give you bitter pills and sugar coating. The pills are harmless. The poison is in the sugar.
My crazy best friend tried my wedding dress and posted it on Instagram, so I told her that I would not pay her back. I was looking to buy this dress from a brand in NYC. Because I'm not based there, the only option was to go through a retailer where I'm based, and that would cost $2,400 excluding alterations. I found a listing from Still White and it was the exact dress I wanted in my size and brand new for $900. My longtime friend from school, Serena, who happened to be in New York at the time, agreed to pick it up for me and bring it back with her to where I'm based. I was grateful and happy, and I was even intending to gift her $100 on top of the Uber rides to and from the place I said I would reimburse as my token of appreciation. However, my joy turned to horror when I saw Serena's Instagram story showcasing her trying on my wedding dress. I called her out for it, telling her I wasn't happy she not only tried it without my permission but posted it for the public to see. She didn't take it down even after a conversation we had about this. To make matters worse, she admitted she collected the dress posing as me. Through an email bill later, I noticed that the dress had also been altered on the spot, all without my knowledge or consent. When confronted, Serena nonchalantly stated that it was her one chance to try a wedding gown and insisted I should get over it and reimburse her the $900 she paid for the dress. My wedding dress experience was entirely hijacked, and I'm now hesitant to pay her back. This all happened yesterday and she reached out today to ask for the money back and told me to get over it because she needs to make a big purchase tomorrow and it would help her cash flow. Since she wants it so bad, she can now have it.
I can't take this anymore. I'm leaving my wife. I'm posting this so the people who care can have a little resolution as to my situation. I will probably be deleting this Reddit account shortly after posting. My wife, 30 female, and I, 26 male, have been married for a year now, and I can't handle her crazy anymore. We lost a baby back in January, and that triggered her having a complete mental breakdown. She got diagnosed as bipolar a few months back, and when she was taking her medication everything seemed like it was back to normal. She hasn't taken the medication or been to therapy in a very long time, and everything has gotten worse. I am genuinely afraid for my life and her life way more often than I should be. She refuses violently to take her medication or to anything to get treatment. She will yell and scream and chew me out for an hour straight and then try to cuddle up to me or get intimate like nothing happened. Her mood swings are getting extreme. She's unpredictable at best, but I have to walk on eggshells just to avoid getting hit on the back or the shoulder. I have bruises now. The worst of it was only last night, when we were in bed and I didn't want to cuddle in the position she wanted to. She sat up, straddled me and hit my chest, neck and face. She full on quit her job. I now have the only income stream in our family. We barely have enough money to live and we can't afford to do very much extra. She barely leaves the house without me, and just stays home and naps or watches TV all day while I'm at work. She manipulates me into having bedroom fun time. Yes, it is very much manipulation now, for hours after I get home, and guilt trips me when I want to go see my friends or go to the gym or church. I am not taking summer college courses, so I have a little more free time than I did in the spring, and she has made sure that I spend every single minute of it with her. I feel less like her partner and more like her slave a lot of the time. She obsesses over me to a ridiculous degree. I found an Apple AirTag in my car, and in my work backpack. She's controlling, she's manipulative, calculating and really cruel. Almost every single thing she does is like effing scientifically designed to either get something from me or to punish me for not being enough. I found a chart and some notes on her phone of ways that have worked to get me to do things for her, like sleep with her or household chores or to get me to buy her a gift or take her out. She has an effing extensive list of my daily schedule and activities, like if she wants bedroom fun time or to watch a particular movie, or to go out to eat, or get me to buy her jewelry or perfume or clothes or shoes. She has this system of ways of asking me and coercing me into do it, with rewards and punishments to get me to mentally associate doing things or not doing things. It's like training a dog except I'm her effing husband. I feel like every day it gets worse. I'm living in a nightmare. I can hardly look at her anymore. It's been 3 days since I found the list. I printed it out and I'm taking it with me. She makes me sick. I'm going to leave the AirTag in my work locker and visit a divorce attorney today. I already have the appointment. I'm going to call her parents and tell them everything too before I tell her. My big issue is I don't know how she's going to react when she gets the news. I'm thinking I might maybe get my documents and valuable stuff out of the apartment when I get home and pretend I'm taking them to a storage unit, and then call her from a hotel. I'm also going to have the cops on standby if she even makes any indication that she's going to hurt herself. But yeah, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Maybe I'm weak, or not tough, or an asshole for not sticking with her, but I can't keep living like this. What is the most effed up thing a person you know has done? He slept with his son's long-term girlfriend. Like his son's first love. Told his son like it was no big deal. He told us about it at work, and said his son was being a bit of a B-word about it. We then watched his life fall apart as both his kids cut him out of their lives. Dude found out he became a grandpa from his older daughter via an email with no pictures. As you can imagine, sleeping with his son's GF was the worst thing I'm aware of that he's done, but he was a horrible person generally speaking. I know someone who was doing a semester abroad in China during college. She let her boyfriend at the time fly out from the US for a week-plus visit, knowing she was going to dump him the second she saw him. She did it because it would have been too hard to dump him over the phone.
My boyfriend of 8 years cheated on me with his best friend's fiancée and is now begging me for a second chance. I still love him but I don't know what to do. For some background, I, 28 female, met my boyfriend, 28 male, in college when we had a class together. He was struggling because of his party lifestyle but me, being a studious introvert, was thriving. He begged me to help him and I relented eventually. I hated his guts but, for some reason, he made me fall in love with him. He was such an open book too, and waited patiently for me. I didn't let him kiss me until 4 months into dating and didn't sleep with him till our 1-year anniversary. He was my first and I really wanted to be sure I was giving myself to someone who truly loved me. I didn't ask him to but he slowly gave up partying and drinking for me, and we both found a new friend group in college who we've maintained to this day. He gave up everything willingly, because he said he'd rather spend time at home with me. The one thing from his past that he didn't give up though was his childhood best friend who we'll call Max. Max always hated me. I think he blames me that he sees my boyfriend only a few times a month and that he isn't fun anymore. He also openly questions our relationship in front of both of us and says stuff like, "You'll come to your senses eventually," when talking to my boyfriend. I told him I wasn't comfortable so since then, he never let Max around me but they still hung out and I really didn't mind because I trusted him. Okay, so this is what happened recently. Max got engaged to his long-term on-again off-again girlfriend and invited both of us over to celebrate. It would have been just the 4 of us. I declined, which, in retrospect, was a big mistake. My boyfriend offered to stay with me but I told him he didn't need to and I'd understand if he wanted to support Max even though I despised the guy. Again, this was a mistake in retrospect. The next morning my boyfriend came home crying. We are living together. He was still clearly hungover so I bathed him and put him to bed. When he woke up a few hours later, he told me everything. Apparently, he got really drunk at the party. Max's fiancée, who I guess I'll call the homewrecker, was very flirty with him the whole night and took care of him when he passed out. The next thing my boyfriend says he remembers was when he woke up, homewrecker was down on him while he was exposed. He says he was too drunk and just went along with it while Max watched. According to my boyfriend, they're into the whole hot wife thing whatever that means. The next thing my boyfriend says he remembers was waking up exposed next to homewrecker with a bunch of used protection around them. He rushed home after that. My heart is breaking right now guys, and I really don't know what to do. He's been begging me for a second chance, even showing me he blocked Max and homewrecker on everything. He promised never to contact them again. He also swears to not drink when I'm not around anymore and that he'd keep his phone unlocked and I can look through it whenever I wanted, no questions asked. He kept telling me how much he regrets it and how much he loves me and that I'm the only one. The sad thing is, I believe him. This man was my first everything and I feel like my world is just crumbling around me. A few weeks ago, we were thinking about getting married and how many kids we wanted. Now, I can't even look at him without my heart breaking in two. This all happened a few days ago and I've barely left the room. He's giving me space, but he's also doing the little things that make me fall for him again. He keeps the house clean, he's been cooking me the food I like and leaving short love notes beside it on the dinner table. I'm lost right now. I so desperately want to forgive him, but every time I look at him, I can't shake off the image of him being with another woman. I know I was never his first, but he kept promising me I was going to be his last and he broke it. Despite everything though, deep down I still love him. Guys, I don't know where to go from here. I'm crying just typing this out, but I don't have anyone to talk to about this. Usually, when problems this big come up in my life, he's the one I turn to for help. I love him, but I don't know if I can trust him anymore. What should I do? Will couples counseling help? Should I just cut my losses and end it? He seems very remorseful and he did confess to the whole thing immediately after. Should I give him a chance? Sorry for the long rant. I'm just lost right now. Update 3 days later. A lot has happened in the last few days, so where do I begin? Well, I think some of you would be delighted to know that he left me for not being supportive. Sucks to be me, I guess. I guess you guys were right, I am a sucky girlfriend. He's now off to be with his brand new supportive girlfriend. Just kidding, but some of you would have wanted that to happen, right? So here's what really happened. After reading some of your comments, I started to see things from a different perspective. I never really thought of it as anything other than cheating, and it didn't help that when he came home to me that morning he claimed to have cheated on me, and I guess my mind just started going to a dark place where logic goes out of the window. It's definitely not an excuse, but I really wasn't in the right mindset after he said he cheated. I guess it was after the realization that this man would never willingly hurt me is when all the anger and pain of being cheated on was washed away. I couldn't really bring myself to talk to him at first. He was on the couch blankly staring at whatever was on TV. He looked empty. I sat beside him and told him I had no intentions of breaking up. Well, he came to life almost instantly, and before I knew it, his arms were wrapped around me. He was shaking and I could tell he was crying. I was too. Remember when I said I felt my world was crumbling around me? Well, for the first time in what seemed like forever, I could feel it starting to fall back into place. I didn't realize how much a simple embrace can be so calming. Everything was starting to feel right again. Then we talked. He apologized again for cheating, and when I told him I didn't think he cheated, he had a puzzled look on his face. I asked him if he gave consent and he said no. I tried to explain. I guess he still doesn't realize that he was actually taken advantage of. He said the first thing that came to mind after what happened was that he cheated and was so afraid of losing me. This man, after being essayed, first thought of how much he betrayed me instead of how he was betrayed himself. I was floored. He said his first response had to be to win me back, which is why he's been going the extra mile the last few days taking care of me from a distance. When it was my turn to speak, I told him how sorry I was for not being supportive. I jumped to conclusions without actually thinking about it clearly, which was pretty out of character for me. A few more exchanges after that and the conversation shifted to Max and Homewrecker. I told him that I never wanted him anywhere near Max or her again, and he agreed. I've always thought he was a bad influence, but I never thought he'd take it this far, so I never stopped him from seeing his best friend. He showed me his phone, which didn't have a lock anymore. He said he blocked both of them on everything but wanted to keep the open phone policy. He said it so I can be sure he isn't back in touch with Max. I urged him to file a police report, but he was against it. He said that even if he was essayed, he couldn't bring himself to do it. I didn't really know about it at first, but his family and Max's family had a very long history of friendship. Their moms were college best friends and their dads worked together. Not only were the two of them close, even their families were close. I thought they were just neighbors, but it was more than that. I didn't know because every time I visit his family, the topic was never brought up, and I haven't really met any of Max's family, except for his little sister who came by to play with my boyfriend's little brother. He said he didn't want to ruin decades of friendship and would be content with just going no contact with Max. He's getting tested later today, and I hope that Homewrecker didn't give my man anything. I'm also pretty confident my boyfriend didn't get Homewrecker pregnant because Max absolutely hates children, so I'd imagine Homewrecker would be on birth control given how many dudes she sleeps with. My boyfriend and I came to the conclusion that Max most likely set the whole thing up to break us apart so he can have his best friend back. They used to be partners in crime after all, when it came to parties and picking up women. I would like to point out that I did not force him to change. He himself chose to do so, but I know he did it for me, which just makes me fall in love with him even more. When we first met, he was still the playboy party animal he was, but he told me after hanging out with me for a few weeks that he didn't really feel like sleeping around anymore. I didn't really believe him at first, obviously. I've also noticed that a few people were bashing me for making him wait 1 year for lovemaking. I'm sorry, I just have different views. I believe that lovemaking is for people who love each other, so I wasn't willing to sleep with anyone I wasn't deeply in love with and didn't love me back. I don't judge people who sleep around. My boyfriend has a high body count, but I don't really hold it against him. But back then, I just wanted to be sure I wasn't just a girl he bangs or a conquest, but someone who he actually loves and sees a future with. Considering his past, I was very skeptical for a while and I had my walls up the entire time, but he slowly tore them apart and I'm glad he did. That reluctant yes when he first asked me out was and still is one of the best decisions I've ever made. Max's plan had the opposite effect. It's rough now, but I can see this experience making our relationship even stronger. I love him more than ever, believe it or not, and I'm sure he feels the same way. The last few days have taught us both how crappy our lives would be without the other. I guess it made us value each other more? Not that either of us took the other for granted. And yes, we are both getting therapy. Both individually and as a couple. To be honest, I'm still shaken over the whole thing. Even when we cuddle, I can still imagine Homewrecker having her way with him and I can't help but cry about it. If I'm still shaken up by the whole thing, I can only imagine how much worse it is for him, but I'll be there for him every step of the way. I know he didn't cheat. I know he won't break my heart. I know that he loves me. I know that I love him. It's hard right now, but knowing those facts makes me confident we can see this through. One Redditor pointed out that we were soulmates, and I like to think that we are. I can't see myself being with anyone but him. Thanks again for all your advice and for making me see things differently. Am I the a-hole for telling my mother-in-law she was dead to me? For the past 3 months it's been a very well-known plan that when I went into labor, my husband was going to drive me to the hospital and my mother-in-law was going to pick up my mother, my kids and my grandmother all from one house. Both my mother-in-law and my mom were supposed to be in the delivery room. My grandma was to watch my 2 kids in the waiting room. Everyone was in agreement with the plan. Now, my husband and I have 2 sons already, and for both births, my mother was present. She helped me through so much of the mental anguish and panic, especially after my last, which literally almost killed me. I was bleeding out on the table and my mom was the only one able to keep me calm. I needed her to be with me for this baby too. So we worked this plan out months in advance and everyone was on the same page. However, I went into labor and we made phone calls to my mother-in-law and my mom, telling my mom to be ready and my mother-in-law to go get my mother. An hour and 15 minutes later, my mother-in-law shows up at the hospital without my mom, my kids or my grandmother. She said, well, it's late so we need to just let everyone sleep. It was 9:30. Then she just sat her SS down on the chair in the delivery room and jumped on her phone. I told her in a pissed off tone to go get my mom, that was the plan, and I needed my mom to be with me, but she just wouldn't. At one point she said that she just didn't feel up to driving that much. So, I told her to get the F out of the room and that she was dead to me. The amount of resentment and disgust that I felt toward her at this moment is honestly not something I feel I will overcome anytime soon. She was pissed, saying that my mom got to experience 2 births already and how she didn't do anything wrong and she was just being respectful of people's sleep, and when she didn't leave, she was actually escorted out. Now, my mom was able to make it to the hospital literally just as I was giving birth. My kids and my grandmother weren't able to make it, which bothers me a great deal. We promised our kids they would be the first to meet their sister, outside of us and Grammy. I cannot forgive my mother-in-law for this at all. I honestly feel like I hate her with every fiber of my being. But I'm being told I'm taking this too far and that it wasn't that big of a deal.
What ruined your wedding? I'm a simple girl from a poor family. So, I thought everything we planned was just fine. Married in my childhood church, my grandmother picked out and paid for my dress. I saw it a week before the wedding. It was beautiful, reception in my grandparents' backyard. All the food cooked by my grandmother, mother and aunt, and surrounded by family and friends. We sent out about 50 invitations. As the RSVPs rolled in, none of my fiancé's invitees had responded. When people started arriving at the church, my side was filling up, but there was not one person on my fiancé's side. I asked the ushers to start seating people evenly between the sides. The ceremony was beautiful. The modest reception was fun. My nephew stuck his fingers in the cake before it was brought out and everyone laughed because it was cute. It started to rain right after my family brought the food out, so everyone, guests included, grabbed the dishes and rushed them back in the kitchen. Again, everyone laughed and told us how it was good luck to have rain on your wedding day. Eventually the party came to an end and we left for our honeymoon. I thought the wedding was perfect except that there was no one there for my husband except his father and sister. When we got home, my husband's father called to tell us that my mother-in-law had called everyone we invited on his side and told them that the wedding was cancelled. My mother-in-law tried to ruin our wedding. She didn't ruin it for me, but it really hurt my husband. What was your best or worst time in a game of truth or dare? I was dared to cover the head of my pee-pee with cayenne pepper, then close my foreskin over top of it. I was 13 to 14 at the time and was in a situation that would have looked really bad to my foster parents. Ironically, about 5 minutes after I did the deed, my foster parents pulled up to the house. So everyone was playing scattered. But I had a pee-pee full of cayenne pepper and it was burning. Like a lot. But it gets worse. My friend that was over for the night decides to do it as well because I look like I'm being dramatic. He didn't use it as much as me, but we both were in so much pain and regretted everything. So we decided we were gonna go get cleaned up. Me first because I did it first. Except for one kind of big problem. My foster dad worked in construction, then went to my foster mom's business and would help her until she closed. Then he would come home and shower immediately, then go to bed. He would get angry if you tried to shower after he had gone to bed, cause the bathroom was right next to his room, and the pipes were extremely loud. So by the time I got upstairs to get cleaned up, He was walking towards the only bathroom with a towel in hand. I had to tell my foster mom I was doing the pee dance cause I was moving around so much and looked so uncomfortable. I couldn't tell my foster parents the truth, cause that would involve them knowing that we were playing truth or dare and had a fit. I went outside to pee but actually just left my wang hanging in the cool wind to help with the burning sensation that wouldn't go away. I also tried to scoop some of it off. Yes, I used that much, because I'm an idiot, that's why, but if I touched it too hard it was just burning more and felt even more uncomfortable. So I got the genius idea to grab 2 glasses of water, take them down for my friend and we would get cleaned up downstairs in my room, then just dump the cayenne pee water out the window. Sounds great, right? I get the water downstairs, and my friend is already in my room, using one of my deodorant sticks on his junk to try and counter the burning. So he rubbed his sweaty cayenne pepper pee all over my deodorant I used for school after gym. By the look on his face, I could tell he could give less than a fuck about it. I couldn't really either cause I was focused on cleaning myself up. I hand my buddy his glass, and we clean ourselves up to the best of our abilities, dump out the cayenne pee water, and then go to bed. The next morning, we go upstairs for breakfast and bring our glasses up. I went to put mine in the sink, and my foster dad said something like, "Don't grab another glass, we don't need any more dirty dishes than we already have." And so I said, "Oh no, I'm just washing hours before dinner." He says, "Why? You just had water, right? It's not even dirty." And because I have social anxiety and didn't want to talk about this any more than I already was, I just said, "Yeah, I guess you're right." We both filled our glasses with water, didn't touch them. Then I got yelled at for wasting drinking water. We had to buy our water from in town cause our well water was salt water. And yes, I forgot about the cayenne pee deodorant and put it on at school. It burned and chapped my armpits during flag football. Worst fucking game of truth or dare I ever played. My ex-wife wants my children to cry harder at her horrible husband's funeral, so I made her grieve one more time. My ex-wife and I share 2 children. Our daughter is 13 and our son is 11. She was remarried for 7 years and had 2 children with her late husband. He died a week ago. My kids were not close to the man. He was a hard ass, and the kids found him overly strict, so they didn't like being around him. He spoke to them like they were soldiers and was their commanding officer. That was how he talked to his kids, barking orders at them. Also, they were very strict about sitting and standing posture. It was very tough on them regarding what extracurricular activities they wanted to do. He had his ideas of what kids should do, and my son especially wasn't interested in the sports aspect, and that was not what my ex's late husband liked to hear. He also didn't believe kids should be helped with homework beyond kindergarten and did not like how the kids would react to seeing me during exchanges. He thought kids should act civilized at all times. He disapproved of taking off running and jumping into my arms and said it to them. The relationship, at best, was strained, but they confided in me over the years that they hoped their mom would leave them. She loved the guy, though, and when he died last week, she was a mess. Our kids were with me when it happened, and she wanted to see them, so I brought them over. They comforted their mom, and she told them repeatedly it was okay to cry, it was okay to miss him, and that they were all going to miss him. The kids said nothing. She kept repeating it. I told her I thought the kids got it. When the kids saw their mom again, she was halfway through planning the funeral and asked if they would be able to do a reading or something for the funeral. The kids said they wouldn't be able to. She was with them for a while and then said that since they weren't crying much, maybe they could take a reading and see how they did. On the day, the kids told me about it when I spoke to them and asked if I could talk to their mom. I told my ex not to force the reading. The funeral day came. I showed up for my kids. They were hanging back with me often, and they told me their mom kept watching them, which I witnessed. For the funeral, I sat behind them since she wouldn't let them sit with me. She told us that all her husband's kids should be seated up front, and I didn't have the heart to tell her they weren't as kids on the day of her husband's funeral when she was such a mess. So I bit my tongue and supported my kids. It was after the service that everything went down. The kids came to sit in my car for a while, and we laughed about something. Ex came over and asked how they could be laughing when they had just buried their stepdad and why they showed no grief at all over the loss of the man who was part of their lives for 7 years. She said it was almost like they were glad he was gone. She told them they should have been looking way more somber after he passed. She told them if they didn't care, they needed help because her husband loved them. I stepped in and told her to lay off the kids. They were kids. She told me to stop interfering in how she parents our kids. My daughter ended up getting mad at her mom and told her she wasn't sad he was gone. He was in butt, and she had always hoped she would leave him. She stormed off, and my son followed. My ex was going crazy, and I yelled and told her to cut it out and stop trying to make our kids perform a grieving routine over her husband. I told her they were trying to support her and that she should be proud of them. She started yelling back at me about what an a-hole I was, so I walked away. I 22F can't wait to lose my libido. I 22F can't wait to lose my libido, or at least that's what I thought. You see, my libido has been a source of both pleasure and pain throughout my life. On one hand, it's been a great source of exploration and discovery, allowing me to embrace my sexuality and explore my desires. On the other hand, it's been a source of frustration and awkwardness. It's like a pesky child tugging at my metaphorical pant leg, demanding attention when I just want some peace and quiet. I'm talking about those moments when I'm exhausted from a long day and all I want to do is crawl into bed and peacefully drift away to dreamland. That's when my libido decides to kick into action and make it known that sleep is not going to be an option. It's like it has an impeccable sense of timing, picking the most inappropriate moments to remind me of my intimate urges. So, I was eagerly awaiting the day when my libido decides to pack its bags and bid me farewell. Imagine the joy of not having random intimate thoughts popping into my head at the most inconvenient times. No more awkward moments or sneaky visits to the bathroom to take care of business when no one's looking. But then something unexpected happened. I met someone, a person who made my heart skip a beat and my body tingle with anticipation. Sparks flew, chemistry ignited, and suddenly my libido was roaring back to life with a vengeance. It was exhilarating, yet terrifying. My newfound interest in this person collided head-on with my desire to lose my libido. Torn between indulging in the thrilling pleasure this connection brought or desperately clinging onto my quest for liberation, I had to make a choice. Do I succumb to the intoxicating flames of desire, embracing the roller coaster ride that comes with it? Or do I stand strong in my desire to bid my libido farewell, determined to find solace in a life free from intimate cravings? The answer is still unclear and I'm still navigating these treacherous waters. But one thing is for sure, I'm in for a wild, unpredictable journey, and I can't wait to see where it leads me. Why don't you talk to your once best friend anymore? About half a year before us falling out, her boyfriend broke up with her. She was super upset and for some reason completely cut me out of her life. We spent the everyday together and at that point we were friends for 7 years, but I just continued being the supportive friend and messaged her once in a while to see if she was doing alright. She would ignore me. This went on for about 4 months. Out of the blue one day in September she messages me and asks to meet up for lunch. I'm ecstatic because I missed her and we meet up that afternoon. It was good and she told me she was seeing a therapist and we just let the elephant in the room sit in the corner. We didn't discuss her reasons for cutting me out. Then at the end of the conversation, she says that her and her ex got back together. My response was, okay, is that really good for you? I honestly like the guy and still hang out with him once in a while now, but he was not a very good boyfriend to her. He manipulated her, laid hands on her multiple times, made her and her parents' relationships rocky at best, and then cheated on her with 3 different girls all at the same time. However, he claimed he was a changed man and she fell for it. Eventually around October he breaks up with her again, claiming he has found someone better. His place is a few blocks from mine so she comes over and is absolutely hysterical. I put her in mine and my boyfriend's bed and just hold her for a little and try to calm her down. It was about 11 p.m. and I had classes the next day, but my boyfriend at the time slept on the couch so that she and I could be alone. After an hour or two I got up and went to go get her some water or whatever she asked for. I come back to her swallowing a bunch of pills she had in her bag in a Ziploc bag which was unmarked. I immediately put my fingers in her mouth to try to make her throw up, scream at my boyfriend to call an ambulance, and she's completely melancholic and won't tell me what she swallowed. Ambulance came, she went to the hospital, they admitted her to a psych ward for monitoring, and when she was released she seemed broken. Would not eat, would not drink, smoked a lot, and for a few months she was like a puppy and followed me everywhere. I didn't mind and invited her to Thanksgiving, and even preemptively to Christmas with my family. At the end of November, another friend of mine passed away and I'm having a tough time. She refuses to lend an ear and let me cope, claiming her problems are much worse than mine. Fast forward another week, and I get dropped once again. No communication, nothing. It's radio silence from her as soon as I needed a friend to support me instead of everyone else supporting her. A few months later she messages me and says she needs to talk. I think, okay, one last failed ditch attempt. Go to Starbucks near my place, order drinks and sit down. Her first words to me are, "You're the worst friend I've ever had. You're a degenerate and a waste of space, and I hate you for not letting me pass like I wanted. Don't you see, I lost him, he was my everything." I let her yell at me for about 10 minutes then I'd had enough at this point. I said, when things in your life are going right, when you have a boyfriend, a husband, a family, you'll remember me and how bad of a friend I was for caring about you and loving you. She responded with, "You're just dumb." I dumped my drink on her, iced tea lemonade, which is by far the most dramatic, rude, and actual mean thing I've ever done, and I walked out, blocked her, and have not spoke to her ever since. It's been 4 years, and the mutual friends we had still tell me she asks about me. What's the most disturbing situation you encountered as a CPS agent? I was a CPS agent for 6 years and I had seen some pretty effed up shit, but nothing prepared me for the horror that awaited me when I got a call from the sheriff's department about a house in the middle of nowhere. When we arrived, we found an old shack surrounded by tents where people were living in complete squalor. Some were naked and obviously high as fuck, while others just seemed to be lost in their own thoughts. There were kids running around too, malnourished and neglected as hell. We called social services but it would take them hours to get there, so we had to start questioning these people ourselves, trying not to traumatize the kids any further, which was effing hard. It turns out this group believed that aliens would come down and save them from society, so they abandoned their lives and moved into this shack waiting for salvation. They survived on government assistance, fraudulently claiming disability benefits for everyone, with one person manipulating the system, claiming multiple sclerosis. They also resorted to stealing food since they refused money because it supported capitalism or some poop like that. The kids were confined within property boundaries except on Sundays when they went church hopping looking for food or money from unsuspecting members of churches. The parents didn't know where their kids went most days since everyone would wander off looking for food or camping activities unless someone stayed behind at home due to medical emergencies, which rarely happened. One young girl told us she was 16 but couldn't be sure since she'd given birth twice at 9 and 10 years old. She thought it might have been 2015, who knows? It was unbelievable how these people managed to survive with no basic life skills like cooking, cleaning or personal care, yet somehow they endured despite being severely malnourished. Tragically, one member of the group had gone off alone one night without anyone noticing until days later when someone asked about him. By then wildlife had already eaten his body because nobody knew you needed to bury your dead in rural areas like this one. Have you ever been invited to dinner at someone's house and you were not served any food? I have a particular friend who frequently invites people over to her place for board games, but never provides any food or snacks. Worse still, her parties usually happen during lunchtime. This isn't a huge problem, since I am aware that there won't be any food, so I usually know to eat a big breakfast before I go over there, and perhaps bring a snack that I can share with everyone. However, one night she wanted to host an extra long game night, so she asked me to go to her house directly after work, and the group of us would all spend the whole evening at her house. We were expected to sleep over at her house. It was getting late, and the 4 guests, including me, were starting to get hungry, since none of us had had a chance to eat since lunch. Just then, she pulled out some leftover chicken wings, and proceeded to eat them in front of all her guests. Since I was extremely hungry at that point, I asked her if there was anything that I could eat. She said that no, there was no food for me or the other guests. However, we were welcome to order something delivered, or go and pick up some food and bring it back. Annoyed, I pulled out my phone and ordered pizza for all of us. When it arrived, she had the gall to ask if she could have a slice. I have not spent an evening at her house since then. True, she never promised dinner, but if you invite people to stay at your house for an entire evening, you should expect that those people will need to eat at some point.
My father escaped death and realized that he never really lived, so he kicked our mother out of their house, but his happiness was short-lived. My dad was always mean, bad-tempered, abusive, and bullied anyone who would stand for it, which unfortunately included Mum, who was entirely cowed by the time my brother and I were old enough to get out of Dodge. After a heart attack, my mum devotedly nursed him through. He cannot do anything by himself for more than a year, and my mom has been his primary caregiver. Then, after she slowly regained his health, he decided he'd never really lived. He threw Mum out of the house they owned under joint names and moved in with a girl known in the family as Dad's bimbo. She never held a job, had no qualifications, and was precisely 1/3 his age. I refused to believe she was attracted to him, the stereotypical bad-tempered, overweight, red-faced gammon. Well, it sucks to be the bimbo. He had another heart attack last month and died intestate. Under English intestacy rules, the house is Mum's automatically, and the relatively small size of the rest of his estate means she gets all of that, too. The bimbo, of course, gets nothing, so we emptied the house of portable valuables, replaced Dad's big screen with a small portable, and served her 28 days notice to quit. She's blowing up about her rights all over social media and our small rural town. We don't care. She says she gave up a council flat to move in with him and can't get it back. We don't care. She gambled and lost. She says she's pregnant, but we don't believe her. It hasn't stopped her from smoking and drinking. My husband thinks we should find out if she is carrying our half-sibling. We don't care. Even if she is, the kid is entitled to 1/3 of what my brother and I share. This is England. She won't end up on the streets, but she won't get my mum's house and garden either. I feel like my life has been stolen and moved into a nursing home by my husband, but I am too weak to leave. I'm F42 married to M51, and we've been together for 9 years. He's gained much weight in our time together, putting him between 330 to 360 pounds. He also is addicted to food and 420. I once saw him so stoned and hungry that he ate food out of the garbage. He gets so stoned that his balance becomes an issue, his speech is slurred, and he is catatonic at times. I've given up on mentioning the smell because he gets defensive, and I no longer have the energy to fight it. The entire dining and kitchen area reeks of smoke and weed. If I Lysol or Febreze the area, he acts offended. We have the most gorgeous Four Seasons room off the dining room that I can't enjoy because he's almost always smoking. Due to his weight, he's developed a plethora of medical issues as well, and I feel like I'm living in a nursing home. He needs benches all over the house to sit down, a bench at the end of the bed, a bench chair in the shower, a bench when you first enter the house, and benches everywhere for him to sit. Our home isn't big. He asks me to help him dig out ingrown toenails from his lack of care. He has trouble climbing stairs and can't even walk to the end of our street without complaining that there are no benches when I just want to go on a nice walk, and he now wants a cane. His foot odor is disgusting, and I've told him before that he needs to see a specialist. I paid for a new, very expensive mattress last year, thinking it would be a good investment in our sleep health. He didn't contribute, but over the holidays last year, he consumed everything he could that had even a speck of 420 in it and completely binged on sugar, liquid cheese, and meat one night. I told him to stop and that he was going to be sick. He ate a gallon freezer bag full of sugar and homemade Christmas candy. We went to bed that night, and he was moaning and groaning, so I left to sleep in the guest room. He woke me up at 7 the next morning to tell me he had pooped our new bed, and it had gone all the way through to the mattress, but don't worry because he was cleaning it. I just turned over in silence and sobbed. I pay all utility bills and do all the cleaning and laundry. He never helps with anything unless it's a landscaping pet project. I'll carry heavy things up and down stairs, and he won't offer to help. He ripped me from a nap when I had a migraine this year, telling me I was acting like a fucking bee, and threatened to call my parents and tell them I needed psychiatric care because I hadn't been out of bed all day when he needed his wife. Yesterday, he went out all day and came home with $600 worth of trees. I asked him about the cost, and he just brushed me off. He then said his mother had given us money. I told him I didn't view it as our money because he didn't consult me on how to spend it. He asked how we should spend it, and I told him we needed to look into home repairs, such as a new AC and furnace unit. He semi-scoffed and said, well, we'd need to finance that. We haven't had intimacy in 2 years, and I don't care. He slid his hand down my pants to grab my bare butt and has grabbed my breasts, and it makes me want to sob. I feel I'm being unfair, but I feel like my life has been stolen, and I'm trapped in a nursing home, coughing and complaining about smoking. I can't even use the bathroom without him following me and watching me pee. I've sat in tears in corners of my house, thinking about how I don't want to live this way. I want to leave. I'm too weak to do it. I feel like it's my fault. I failed him or us somehow. I just can't stand this anymore. I cannot stand being around him. I sleep to escape him when there's no other way. I'm scared of him. I'm horrified of him.
Lead me on? Have fun failing this entire course. I know what I did seems over the line, but I feel like I was clearly taken advantage of and what I did was well deserved. I've always been sort of a loner. I'm not the most handsome or confident guy and I only had one girlfriend back in 8th grade who broke my heart. Ever since then, I have had issues talking with girls and I figure it is usually not worth it. I don't have much dating experience, but based on what I've learned from dating podcasts, today's women aren't worth my time anyway. I hear a lot about how demanding and hyper-feminist girls in their 20s are, and I feel like maybe I'm not missing out on much by being single. So usually I just don't put myself out there, so after getting my heart broken again recently, I really just wanted to make the girl pay. It all happened during my chemistry class last semester. Our class was sectioned out into groups and I got put into a group with a moderately attractive girl. She didn't wear makeup or dress slutty and still looked like she had such a natural beauty to her and I felt myself developing a crush on her as the class went on. She had a really sweet personality, and she would constantly ask me to hang out to study. But she would always make conversation about things other than our classwork, and she asked me lots of questions about myself and my life. I had never had someone act so interested in me, and I figured based on how she treated me, that she was interested in me too. She would text me with lots of flirty emojis and exclamation marks, and towards the end of the class I decided to shoot my shot and ask her out. We were in the middle of studying for our big final, and I spilled my guts and told her how much the past weeks had meant to me and how I wanted to take her out so we could keep pursuing our connection. She looked at me like I was some sort of sick puppy. I guess she let me down gently. All she said was that she already had a boyfriend and she only saw me as a friend. She gave me some fake apology about leading me on, but I knew she didn't mean it. She had hidden her boyfriend from me the entire time, basically lying straight to my face. I decided to get back at her for making me feel this way. Since we had been doing group work over the whole semester and working closely, I had her log in for her school Google Drive account. I decided to go on her account and delete her final project for our class. It was worth 60% of our grade and was due the next day. I knew without that project she would fail, and I just hoped she would cry and feel as low as she made me feel. Have you ever walked into your home and knew something wasn't right? I bought my first house when I was 19 years old and I got 2 male and 1 female Rottweilers to protect my home. It was a big house. Flash forward about 2 years, I went out of town for about 5 days. I got home and called out for my babies, no answer. So, I started to go room to room looking for them. I found them in the last bedroom that I looked in. They had cornered a guy that had broken into my house and had him cowering him on top of a highboy. I then called the police and told them that someone had broken into my house and that they needed to come and get him. I was told to get out of the house and that they would be there as soon as possible. They showed up in about 5 minutes to me sitting in my living room watching TV. I took them to the bedroom where the man was still on the highboy. The officers took a step into the room and all 3 dogs stood up and started looking at them and then started to show their teeth at the guy on the highboy. Well, I called them out of the room and the police got the man down and put him in handcuffs. He had one request before they took him to jail. Could he please go to the restroom? What made the high school legend become a legend? Not my story, but my friends. My buddy went to a military boarding school for high school, very strict and regimented, with little to no tolerance for misbehavior. Multiple years of this environment must have pushed someone off the deep end, because during my buddy's second year, someone started shitting in urinals. Big, sloppy, shameless dookies. At least once a month for 3 years, these turds would appear. The culprit became known as the Phantom Shitter, and despite the efforts of a task force specifically assembled to put an end to the nefarious poops, the Phantom Shitter was never captured. This person became a legend at this boarding school because of their stealth, conviction, and utter lack of shame. My buddy kept in touch with one of his instructors over the years, and found out years later that a copycat shitter had briefly popped up. But he was discovered and expelled after only a couple dookies. He lacked the finesse of the mysterious original. What would you do if you found out your partner was homeless? Yesterday morning, I went to go out for a walk around the city and noticed a girl that looked familiar standing in a line at a homeless shelter. I took a double glance and saw a hoodie that was mine and then recognized my girlfriend, Kat. I was pretty shocked by seeing her there, but didn't approach her because I didn't want to embarrass her or anything. So for background info, I met Kat in February at a Dunkin's. I started making small talk with her when I saw we were both wearing the same Dodgers hat. I offered to pay for her drink after shooting the shit for a minute in line and got to know her when she asked if I wanted to sit down with her. As we were finishing up our drink, I asked her out on a date and she accepted. As the last couple of months went by, things were going great with us. I learned that she was working 2 jobs, wanted to go to college, was a devout Catholic. She invited me to attend Mass. I'm not Catholic, but went out of respect, yet I noticed that she never brought up her family except when she mentioned her dad who was a Marine that passed away when she was a kid. Fast forward to the present, and I ended up sending a good morning text inside the Dunkin's as I was looking to see if it was really her. Like clockwork, she pulled out her phone and told me that she was at her apartment and that she was cooking breakfast. It was really surprising for me because I always dropped her off at a nice apartment building whenever a date was over, but I guess she did that to give off the appearance that she wasn't homeless? Now, I want to talk to Kat about her situation. She's kind of a social introvert to put it lightly. If she truly is homeless, I want to offer Kat to stay at my place. The only problem is that I don't want to come off like she owes me or anything like that. I also want to respect her Catholic faith because she told me that she wants to wait to give up her virginity after I originally invited her over to my place before I knew she was homeless. The Catholics aren't fond of unmarried cohabitation either. Thoughts on how I can navigate this? I walked in on my son having intimacy with my brother's wife. I, 44, walked in on my son, 18, having intimacy with my sister-in-law, 34, brother's wife, in a cabin, and I think they have been having intimacy for a while. My brother, 37, moved in with us in February with his wife and 2 children. My husband, 44, and I have big house on a farm. My husband is a farmer, and with everyone working from home we thought it would be a good chance to stay together as family and for my nieces to spend time on the farm. I have 3 children and all of them live with us. The oldest is 18 and the other 2 are 16 and 13. On the day my brother arrived I went to buy groceries with my son and he went to the pharmacy to get his gym supplements and I bought the food. I saw condoms in my son's plastic bag when we arrived at the house, 2 packs with 36 latex each, so 72 in total. Didn't think anything of it, thought he had gotten a girlfriend and wanted to be safe. Everything was fine, everyone got along. My sil and son would go on an early run around the farm. Everything seemed normal until last month when they left on their run, but I was up baking and I never saw them make any rounds around the farm, which was weird. I asked about it and they said they decided to hit the road. I thought nothing of this, everything seemed normal. My sil and son seemed to have a very good bond. Yesterday I was coming from a friend's house early in the morning. The sun wasn't up yet and it was little dark, but I saw that the cabin we have in the farm was open and the light was on. I thought maybe one of the employees had forgotten to lock up, so I went to close the door and switch off the light. As I got closer I heard people having intimacy and I took a peek and it was my son and Sil having intimacy. I didn't confront them, I was so in shock. I still haven't told anyone what I saw and I don't know what to do. Should I confront them? Should I tell my brother? Should I tell my husband? I'm so confused. I've been doing a lot of thinking and I'm sure they have been having intimacy for a while from the latexes. My son was always at the house, never brought a girlfriend. The morning runs around the farm. Do they really go on a run or do they have intimacy? The close relationship.
I broke up with my druggy boyfriend last year, and he has been hunting me down ever since. I have had to move to another state, but now he's tracked down my new number and I don't think he will ever stop looking for me. My ex-boyfriend couldn't handle our breakup and now I have to walk down the street with eyes in the back of my head. 10 months ago, I broke it off with him because there were significant issues that were proving to be too high risk. He abused drugs regularly and in the last 6 months, began to steal. It started out as petty crime, taking chocolate bars or cans of pop, but most recently, he has worked out how to hotwire cars and enjoys taking them out for joy rides. Last month, I finally got out of it for good after a classic can't let go saga and I started to feel like I could move on with my life, but he isn't giving up on me even though I have made myself clear. At first, he made desperate attempts to win me back, such as following me, waiting in specific locations in the hope I would walk or drive past, and even resorting to emotional blackmail. He would text me things like, "I can't live without you, please come back," before I am forced to end it all. I blocked him whenever he tried to contact me on a new number or someone else's phone. I also changed my email, and when that didn't work, I literally left my college and moved to another, which meant moving to a different state away from my family. Recently, I thought I saw his car outside my apartment, which freaked me out. Thankfully, I was wrong, but it got me thinking about my mental health, so I called a buddy of mine who works for the NYPD. They gave me advice on who to talk to and encouraged me to make a report because it sounded like there were grounds to arrest him for stalking. According to my police friend, my ex was in and out of jail when we were together. I knew he was up to something, but I didn't realize how often he was bailed out. I also didn't know that he habitually concealed weapons and on at least 2 occasions was formally charged for this. This felt so scary to me, knowing that every time he confronted me alone, he may have had a knife or gun on his person. About 2 weeks ago, I received the creepiest phone call from my ex who told me he had been looking for me since I left town. He sounded so sinister and even giggled when I told him I wanted to report him. I told him to leave me alone and hung up, totally freaked out. I called my parents and told them what had happened. "Well, if I go missing, you know who has me." I then called campus security and made sure they had his description. Thankfully he never showed up, but my God, the voice on the other end of the phone still gives me chills. While he is out there in the world, I don't think I can ever truly be at peace. I am still so scared that he is hunting for me and that he will never stop. But, over the last 2 weeks, I have started to take charge and be more precautionary. I now own pepper spray, which I keep on my belt or bag. I am taking self-defense classes. I have installed panic buttons at home, and I have a GPS locator so I can be tracked if something happens. Friends of mine suggested buying a gun, but it's not really me and it's tough to get one in the state where I live. I'm trying not to let fear and paranoia ruin my life by taking control of my mindset and making sure I can take action. But I can't shake the fear that every time I turn a corner, he'll be standing there waiting to abduct me or worse. What would you do in my situation? Today I messed up by calling a nice guy a pervert. This happened yesterday. I, 31 female, was in a grocery store parking lot after doing some shopping and started putting my bags away into my car. I had one earphone in and was really focused on the conversation happening on one of my favorite podcasts. As I was finishing up, I noticed some guy on a bicycle heading in my direction. He looked up at me and said, "Nice chest," as he rode past me smiling. I was really caught off guard by this, so I yelled back, "You're disgusting, perv." He glanced back at me with a really confused look and mumbled something like, "What the heck?" I realized about 3 seconds later that what he actually said was, "Nice dress." I was wearing a long, colorful maxi dress that really stood out, I immediately felt like a dummy and I still cringe just thinking about it. Oops, sorry bike guy.
The hero we need, but not the one we deserve. After 7 years of working in retail, I finally witnessed something good. I work in a travel goods store. There were a few customers browsing around the store, no one needed any help at the moment, so I was just standing by the front desk. A customer came in, an elderly man with a deep Haitian accent and okay English. He came up to me and said that he wasn't looking to buy today, but he was planning on visiting family in Haiti that he hasn't seen in over 20 years. He said that he has been saving up money for a while and finally started planning his trip, albeit still a few months away. He just wanted something inexpensive for the trip. So I pointed him in the right direction, and he told me he was going to look around. As I walked away, a younger guy in what looked like a pretty expensive suit waved me down and started asking me some questions about some high-end brands. After about 15 minutes of talking to this other man, the Haitian man walked over and said something along the lines of "I'm sorry to interrupt, but thank you for the help. I'm not ready to buy it yet, but I'll come back in a few months when I have all of my trip money together." The man in the suit then asked him what suitcase he was looking at. And the Haitian man pointed to the cheapest one we had in the front of the store for $20. Suitman said, "You don't want those, they don't last very long the way the airlines throw stuff around. How about one of these?" And he walks over to a mid-range $70 suitcase. The Haitian man laughed a little and said, "I can't afford those." Suitman blew my mind and said, "Don't worry about that, I will pay for it." The Haitian man kinda laughed it off, thinking it was a joke or something, or maybe he misunderstood. Even I was a bit skeptical. But Suitman insisted he was serious, handed me his credit card, and said to let him pick out a color. The Haitian man reluctantly picked out a blue $70 suitcase and walked over to the desk with me. He practically burst into tears when the credit card went through. After some handshaking and many thank yous, the Haitian man left. Suitman proceeded to buy $600 worth of luggage for himself and his family. Not only was it one of my biggest sales ever, it was also the biggest random act of kindness I had ever seen in my life. Kudos to you, Suitman, wherever you are. I fathered my roommate's kid and gave him bad news. I recently moved into a share house with 3 other people. From the beginning, I knew that one of my roommates, Rob, had a 3-year-old kid named Lee who occasionally stayed over. I was prepared for the typical noises and behaviors that might come with having a child in the house. However, it didn't take long before I heard Rob yelling at his son, saying things like, "I will traumatize you until you don't feel any emotions," and other concerning statements. This hit close to home for me because I was bullied by my stepdad as a child, so I knew how it felt to have an adult scream at you when you're just a child. One day, Rob stormed out in anger, and I had finally reached my breaking point. I grabbed my coloring book, went out to Lee, and sat down with him, just spending some time together. When Rob returned, something had changed. From that moment on, I started helping him look after his child because it was clear that he wasn't ready for parenthood and lacked the mental capacity for it. For instance, Lee would sometimes put his crackers into the cat's bowl, and Rob would react by yelling and insulting him. In response, I grabbed my dog's bowl, filled it with water, and placed it on the floor. When Rob saw what I was doing, he yelled at me for what he considered a gross act. I had to explain to him that Lee was just experimenting with his food, figuring out what he liked and didn't like, and that the water was clean. This continued for about a week, with several instances where I had to intervene and mediate between Rob and Lee. It became evident that Rob needed to improve his parenting skills. It reached a point where Lee was using my room as a refuge to escape his father's anger, and I became genuinely worried about his well-being. Frustrated by the situation, I decided to confront Rob over Instagram. I told him that he needed to learn how to be a better parent because I was concerned about Lee's welfare. In response, Rob asked me to stop commenting on his parenting, told me that Lee went into my room because he just wanted to play and accused me of projecting my own trauma onto his child. We engaged in a heated back and forth, during which I mentioned that if he didn't improve his parenting, I would consider contacting Lee's mother or even the authorities because it seemed like child abuse. A day later, I contacted Lee's mother, providing her with screenshots of our conversation and offering to share voice messages I had recorded of Rob yelling at Lee and saying hurtful things. She spoke to Rob about the situation and explained that they had an agreement, and he was working on improving. Ultimately, she asked me to step back from Lee and Rob's life. Now, Rob wants me to leave the share house.
Am I the a-hole for throwing away my daughter's scuba gear behind her back? I've never done something so extreme as a parent, and until now I never thought I could act like this. I am a single mother to a teenage daughter. I love her with all my heart, but I'll be the first to admit I can be sort of overprotective of her. When my daughter was still a toddler, I struggled a lot to raise her myself, and sometimes I feel ashamed when I think of the places we lived or how poor we were when she was younger. I was always an anxious person, but nothing makes me more nervous than my daughter's safety. Once when she was about 7 years old, I was watching her play at the park when I looked away for a moment. It was one of the most horrific moments of my life when I looked back to the park and didn't see her. It turns out she had chased a squirrel out of the park and into a nearby neighborhood. I called the police, and it took us hours to find her. I even got CPS called on me because of this incident. Ever since that day in my daughter's childhood, I have been very overprotective of her. She is now 17 years old, and she's growing up into a brilliant, accomplished young lady. My daughter is very outgoing and fearless. It's like she has all the traits I never did. She is an excellent student and a devoted athlete. Last year she won her school's track meet, and she is on track to graduate next year as valedictorian. I am so proud of her, but sometimes I worry about her bold nature. Even though what I did might seem extreme, I was only trying to protect my daughter. Anyway, over the summer, my daughter went on a day trip with her best friend's family. She ended up trying out scuba diving without my permission on this trip, and unfortunately, she fell in love with it. Even though I wasn't happy to hear it, she came home exhilarated over the experience and begged me to allow her to become scuba certified. At first, I said no, it was too dangerous, but she begged me and said she would pay for everything herself since she had a part-time job and promised she would be safe as always. Eventually, I relented, and she began the process of getting certified. She was so happy during this time, she started getting more interested in marine biology as well and would talk for hours about the places she wanted to travel to one day to dive in. I wanted to support my daughter despite my worries, so I joined her one day when she went to her scuba class. I can't describe the pure panic I felt as I watched my daughter go underwater and stay there for what felt like hours. I nearly had an anxiety attack up there just staring into the deep, blurry diving pool. I felt the same fear I did when she got lost as a child. I couldn't see my baby, I felt like she was gone all over again. As I waited for her to finish up her class, I knew I couldn't handle her doing this hobby anymore. On the car ride home, I cried and told her how terrifying this was for me. I begged her to stop for my sake. I told her that this hobby was just so dangerous and it would unalive me if she continued getting more invested in it. My daughter cried too. She said I couldn't hold her back just because I didn't do anything to manage my anxiety. She said she wasn't just my daughter, she was her own person with her own hopes and dreams. She said she had always been a safe and mature person because I raised her that way, so why couldn't I trust her? I told her I understood, but I still needed her to stop scuba diving as soon as possible. At this point, we were pulling into our driveway, and all she said was, "Get help, Mom," and she slammed the passenger door and stormed inside. I was a mess sitting there alone in the car. I had so many emotions running through my head. There was one thing I was sure of, I could not let my daughter continue going underwater. I could not handle this, and I couldn't just sit by and watch as her life got even more dangerous the closer she got to certification. Anyways, this is where I may have screwed up. I started the car again and drove to a nearby dumpster. I must have looked crazy, tears and snot covering my face as I dumped all of my daughter's scuba gear into the dumpsters. But I didn't care, all I cared about was keeping my daughter safe. She has class again next week, but I'll tell her before about what I did, even though I'm sure it will be another hard conversation. Am I the a-hole for throwing away my daughter's scuba gear behind her back? In my first post I spoke about how I threw away my daredevil daughter's scuba diving gear since she wouldn't quit by herself. I know my actions seem extreme, but I was just trying to protect my baby. I know I initially said that I would tell her I threw away her scuba gear before it was time for her weekly class, but I was so nervous about the confrontation I just waited till the day of. When it was the usual time to leave for her class, my daughter got in the car herself and honked the horn to signal me. I was so nervous, I knew that the time to tell her was now, and there was no avoiding it. I got in the car with her and said gently, "Baby, we're not going to class today, you're done with those classes actually." My daughter seemed really confused at first. She said no, I paid for the entire course and I'm only a fourth of the way through. I said no, you're all done with that, sweetie, like I said it's not safe. That's when my daughter started losing patience with me and said that she was either doing this now, or the next year after she turned 18, so I might as well leave her alone to pursue her interests since it would happen either way. That's when I started to get frustrated with myself. I raised my voice and said that as long as she lived under my roof, I would do everything I could to protect her even if she didn't agree with me. Things only got more heated, until, eventually, I let it slip that she didn't have equipment for class anyway, and she had no choice but to stop going. That's when my daughter's jaw dropped, and she checked the trunk for her stuff just to find it was empty. My daughter collapsed in the driveway. Seeing her so heartbroken like that unalived me, but she had pushed me to this point. The next thing I knew, my daughter got in my face and screamed at me like never before. She called me a neurotic beach. She said she was nothing like me and that I was a coward. She said just because I was weak and fearful of everything in life, it didn't mean she had to live her life in my overprotective shadow. I cried, but she just went on and on. Everything that came out of her mouth was crueler than the last. The last thing she said was, "How am I ever supposed to trust you again after this?" and stormed inside. I tried to follow her and apologize, but she just packed a bag and left for her friend's house. It's been a couple of days now, and she has slept at her friend's house the entire time without even checking in on me. She's ignoring my texts as well. I have her location, so at least I know she's safe. At first, I thought I was doing the best thing for my child's safety, but after seeing my daughter's reaction, I wonder if maybe I went too far. I looked into replacing the equipment, but it's expensive and ultimately, I don't want her to return to scuba diving. Even though it's damaged our relationship, at least I know my baby is safe and above water. My mother married my boyfriend's father so she could try and break us up. My ex-boyfriend and I were together for more than 3 years. We broke up because my mom and his dad got together. For months, our parents joked about us being like siblings and introduced us to others as their kids. They teased us a lot, pretending we were closely related even though we weren't at all. In fact, we were together before they were. When they got engaged, the jokes got even worse. They started talking about us as a regular family, with a married couple and their children. My mom even suggested I think of my ex and his sister as my own siblings. Just before we broke up, I got worried about a possible pregnancy. I told my mom, who relieved me by saying it was good I wasn't pregnant, because she asked, "How would you explain that to your future kids?" They both treated us like we were the ones who were in the wrong. At their engagement party, my ex wasn't there, but I was. My mom gave a speech about how she was so thankful for the family she had, and how all her children were so great. Aside from me and my ex, because of our relationship. It made the whole situation worse, and my ex and I broke up not long after because of all the teasing from our extended and close family. Fast forward to the wedding. My ex and I hadn't spoken much since the breakup, but he reached out to figure out how to handle the situation. We decided to attend the wedding together, but things took a turn during the event when the DJ played a song dedicated to the children and played Sweet Home Alabama. My ex and I left the wedding, and we eventually talked things out and got back together. We realized that we needed to make our own decisions about our relationship and limit our contact with our parents. We also decided to see a couples counselor for guidance. Recently, I met with my mom to discuss boundaries in our relationship. She noticed a mark on my neck from my boyfriend and assumed it was from my brother. I corrected her, saying, "He's not my brother," which led to a bigger conversation. It turns out that my mom and stepdad had been trying to break us up since they started dating. They were concerned we'd move away and wanted to avoid looking odd to their friends and family. Now I'm left in shock, not sure how to handle this situation. I know I need to talk to my boyfriend when he's done with work, but how do we deal with both sets of parents moving forward? Any advice would be appreciated.
My corn star friend with an 11-inch PP got us kicked out of the club. I have a friend I'll call Bub. Bub is about 5 foot 5 inches and has an 11-inch PP. It's ridiculous. Unfortunately for Bub, he's also got no game whatsoever. He only got into corn because he literally could not find anyone who would have intimacy with him. Now he's been in corn for a long time and doesn't know how to behave around girls who aren't corn stars. He's both fun to take to bars and terrible to hang out with at the same time. You'll be chatting up a girl or something and he'll just come right over and say something like, "I'd F that butt. Can I buy you a drink?" What? Come on, dude, at least pretend you've talked to a girl before. But no, that's Bub for you. No clue how to talk to real girls, has threesomes with super hot corn stars every week for money. Bub and I and 2 other friends were upstairs at a very popular bar and nightclub in LA. We were friends with the bartenders, so we're all drinking for free. Girls are dancing everywhere, on tables, the bar, occasionally with one of us for no reason at all. Life was good. One girl walks up and starts grinding on Bub. This never happens. Usually he's too quick with the gross and off-putting comments, but it was loud and we were drunk and she somehow managed to sneak in there real quick like a chipmunk and get up on him before he noticed. The other 3 of us are stunned. A girl is dancing with Bub? And Bub is grinning like a teenager seeing his first boobie. He's not even dancing with her, but just smiling and pointing at what's happening to make sure we all noticed. It's hilarious. And then suddenly she stands bolt upright. She spins around. "What the hell, dude," she says. "Just because I'm dancing doesn't give you the right to feel me up. Let's be clear." Bub is standing up with both arms in the air. One is holding a beer and one was pointing down at this girl's butt grinding on his crotch, but is now palm up like I didn't do anything. We all notice this at the same time. I notice, our friends notice, and the girl notices. It's like slow motion. We look from his hands, down to his laughing face, down to his pants. The anaconda had risen, and apparently it felt just like a hand sliding up this girl's thigh. The 3 of us think this is hysterical. The girl, however, has an even more shocked face than before. "Are you effing kidding me?" she says. "We're dying." One of the guys literally snorts beer out of his nose. The girl gets down on her knees and straight up grabs his genitalia. My eyes are tearing up. It's so funny. Bub, for once in his life, says nothing at all. This girl then yells, as loud as she can over the music, "Wanda, you've got to see this guy's weenie." Her 2 friends come over and all 3 are down on the ground grabbing at Bub's jeans and giggling. This is too much for Bub. "Alright girls, let's do it," he says, and unzips his pants and whips out the monster. And that's the story of how we got kicked out of the nightclub. I did get the number of one of the girls though. Bub got nothing, because they were all terrified it might eat them, or something. My girlfriend gave me an ultimatum: I need to get rid of my dead wife's stuff or she's leaving. I, 29, first got married at the age of 18 to my girlfriend I had since age 15. We enjoyed 6 years of marriage together before she passed away in a motorcycle accident, leaving me broken and severely depressed for years. About a year ago, 4 years after my wife's passing, I met my current girlfriend, 30, at a work event and we really hit it off. I decided that it was time for me to start looking for a serious partner again and that my wife would have wanted me to be happy. My current girlfriend and I became more serious over time and we moved in together 2 weeks ago. I've talked with her extensively about my deceased wife and the mental health issues it brought to me, and she has been nothing but supportive and loving. The problems began after we moved in together. I have a small chest that I used to keep under my bed that has a few things that belong to my deceased wife along with some photos of the 2 of us. During the moving process my girlfriend noticed the chest and asked about it, so I explained what it was and showed her the contents. I didn't really expect it to be a big deal, but since I showed her, things have never been worse for us. She sat me down that night and explained that because I still had the chest and wanted to keep it, it was indication to her that I hadn't moved on from my deceased wife, and that she doesn't think she can continue the relationship unless I get rid of it. I was pretty shocked at this, and told her that I needed some time to think about it. Well, it's been 2 weeks now and I still don't know what to do. My current girlfriend and I have had no major problems up until this point, and she's asking me daily when I plan to get rid of it, and she says she can't live in the same space as the chest. I really don't want to get rid of it, but I want to continue my relationship with her as well. What can I say to get her to understand? Or am I being crazy by keeping those things for years? Update: some people were wondering how often I look at the chest and talk about my late wife. I spend prolonged time with the chest and its contents usually twice a year, on our anniversary date and her death date. So I'm not constantly opening it and having it out and around and stuff. I feel as though I find the most comfort just knowing that it's nearby, strangely enough, which is why I wanted to keep it in the house. Most of the conversations about my previous marriage have been prompted by my girlfriend, not me. I can talk about it pretty openly when asked about my late wife, but I rarely bring her up on my own in conversation. She used to be all I ever talked about and it was annoying and uncomfortable to people in my life. Looking back on a lot of our conversations, my girlfriend would frequently ask questions trying to gauge if I was still mourning or if I was happy again. Now with the chest incident, that makes sense to me that it has been an unvoiced insecurity for a while. At the time I suppose I just thought she was asking if I was depressed still, but I see now she was trying to ask if I was over my late wife. When my girlfriend asked me to get rid of the chest, she did in fact mean dispose of it. I didn't go into great detail about the conversation we had when she sat me down, but I proposed keeping it more tucked away, not in our bedroom, or at another person's home, and she continued to say I was still hanging on and not ready for a relationship in her eyes, and keeping it somewhere else didn't change that. I am definitely not getting rid of the chest, and by that I mean disposing of it, and it's been locked in my car the past couple of days while I've been dealing with this. I got some really good advice from you guys and tried to have an open honest conversation with her today, asking her why the chest was so significant as to give me an ultimatum, and why she felt like I had to get rid of it to continue growing our relationship. She said the entire relationship we've had, she's always felt like she had to match up to the standards of my late wife, or be even better so that I would stay with her, and that me still having the chest was the confirmation that she will always be lesser than. If I got rid of the chest, it would be confirmation that I was ready to give my whole heart to her. This broke my heart honestly, and I couldn't believe she never told me she was feeling this way and that I didn't see it. It also made me feel confused because I've been trying to show her the best I can that I can give her my heart in other ways. Why do I need to dump these precious memories to do that? I told her that the relationship with my late wife and my relationship with her are entirely independent of one another, and that I was focused on building trust and love with her, not trying to replace my late wife or compare her by any means. I told her that I couldn't dispose of the chest because it meant a lot to me sentimentally, but that I wasn't keeping it to hang on or cling to my late wife. I just felt as though it was an important part of my history and I wanted to honor her memory. Some of the trinkets in the chest were from when we were 16 years old, going to high school dances and learning how to drive together. I couldn't simply trash those. I reassured her that I loved her for exactly who she was, not the position she held in my life or how similar she was to my late wife. I told her that I could see us building a life together and that I was focused on our future, not my past. I told her that there is absolutely no competition and that while I was hurt by the ultimatum I was ready to move past this and move the chest to storage somewhere else. It wasn't enough for her. I don't know what else I needed to say or do to communicate my love and dedication, but she was dead set on me getting rid of the chest or her leaving. I told her a final time that there was not an ounce of a chance I was getting rid of it. Radio silence, then she gets a bag of her stuff, hops in her car and drives off, ignoring me when I asked what was going on. After calling her multiple times for a few hours, I learned she's staying with a friend, who she called in the car I guess, so she originally just drove off not knowing where she was going, and she's making arrangements to move out next week. I'm still in shock, but I mostly feel confused and hollow. Maybe I truly wasn't ready for a relationship. Maybe she is just crazy. Maybe a bit of both. What was the cringiest thing you did in your first relationship? Dude gave me a necklace with a little diamond family and a heart with our 2 hypothetical children who he had named James and Jasmine. I wore it for 2 days before I returned it. I was 15. My mom cried. Same guy. We were getting into a heavy makeout session in my parents' basement when I looked up and saw my mom behind him. I was not wearing pants. He ran out the back door while I awkwardly dressed myself. My mom cried. Same guy. Lost my V card to him and he had covered my parents' guest bedroom with rose petals and lit candles. Whipped cream was involved. I thought I had cleaned everything up but missed some whipped cream on the comforter which my mom thought was dried bodily fluid. A lot of it. Guess what? She cried. Same guy. We were doing the deed in the shower at his parents' house and his mom came home unexpectedly. Had to come downstairs and explain why I was showering at their house. She called my mom, who cried and then had a group meeting with both sets of parents telling us that we were moving too fast and talking about safe intimacy. Same guy. His dad walks in while we were watching a movie and fooling around under a blanket. The dude very obviously keeps going while having a full-on conversation with his dad. His dad winked. Same guy. We were in my bedroom and my parents were supposedly at the lake. Car pulls up and he jumps out of my second-story bedroom window to avoid my dad, who searched the entire house for him afterwards. He couldn't play baseball that week and the coach, also my English teacher, was very mad at me. Same guy. We were doing the deed in the baseball field dugout late one night when a couple nonchalantly walked by, pretending they did not see us. Same guy. We were fooling around in the backseat of my car at a local park in the woods and had completely fogged up the windows when a man taps on the door and tells us to knock it off. Turns out it was my neighbor, same guy. We broke up and for some reason my parents felt bad for him, so they let him in with flowers and he slipped them petal by petal under my locked door for 2 hours while trying to convince me to get back together, all while my parents and his dad are sitting in the living room. Same guy. After he followed me around school for weeks, I had guys volunteer to guard me from him. He ended up leaving school over it. Same guy. I got married. We had broken up about 11 years prior at this point, and he texts me on my wedding night saying things like, "What if we had gotten married? We'd probably have James and Jasmine by now." I did not answer. I am still married 4 years later and he still reaches out periodically. Am I the a-hole for telling my fiancée that my friend's trauma is more important than her comfort? My best friend lost a parent a year and a half ago, which led him to a mental health crisis. Our friend group has been picking up the pieces ever since. He's doing much better now that he's in therapy, but he's definitely gone through it. What has complicated matters worse is my fiancée. It goes without saying that I love her, but she is the definition of a busybody sometimes. My best friend is a very private person. She knows something happened with him, but she doesn't know the details of what that something is. She probably never will. But because she's around me and my friends often as my fiancée and I live in the same house, she hears bits and pieces of the story and presses for more information. I try to circumvent this as best as I can. For example, I step out of the room for specific phone conversations. But still, it's hard to limit the discussion about it sometimes. If it's necessary, we bring it up and she's around in person. We'll refer to the Nolan situation without giving specifics. Nolan will also stop by my place at night when he can't sleep. This doesn't happen all that often, maybe twice a month. He'll text me or call me saying he's outside. I'll go sit with him and maybe smoke a little bit, then he'll head home. I'll wait up until I know he got home safely, then I go back to sleep. My fiancée hates this. She claims the phone calls always wake her up. They don't. She just sometimes happen to wake up for the bathroom while I'm outside, and that me not being in bed is alarming. This brings us to last night. Nolan stopped by and when I came back inside, my fiancée said she was putting a stop to it. She said all the sneaking around is making her paranoid. She doesn't feel like she can properly trust me or be a part of my friend group without knowing the details, and that Nolan needs to stop relying on me so much. I told her that no matter whether we're married, dating, whatever, she will never have any ownership over my friend's trauma, and that she was never going to be able to order me around in regards to it. I also said her comfort was less important than someone's actual physical well-being. She was obviously hurt by this and went to stay with her mom after work today. Update: am I the a-hole for telling my fiancée that my friend's trauma is more important than her comfort? Since my first post, I've had 3 conversations with my fiancée relating to this topic. The first didn't go well. I still had a lot of walls up that didn't allow me to engage properly. I didn't get angry, I just didn't say much at all. My fiancée told me what a lot had already assumed. She didn't feel like a priority. She was hurt by my comment and my actions. She gave me specifics on what needed to change if we were to continue. I told her I needed time, and she went back to the parents' house for the night. I took this night alone to truly think over the things she had requested, no more late night visits and other harsh boundaries being put into place, and tried to imagine a life where that happened. The second conversation was much more impactful. I took feedback I was given here, which mainly centered around honesty and apologies. I told her that I was sorry for waking her up and for not treating her how a fiancé should. I also told her I was sorry I hadn't been prioritizing her. But that I couldn't. At least not in the top, number 1 spot. The gist of my side was this: my life partner, in a lot of ways, has already been chosen. It might change in the future, but as of right now, my friendship is the most important relationship in my life. He isn't just like family to me, he is family to me. That goes beyond just the 2 of us. His little brother is my little brother. My mom and dad have all but officially adopted them into our family and vice versa. Our lives are intrinsically enmeshed and have been since we were 15. I had been doing a disservice to her by pretending that I could put anyone else over this familial unit that has already been built. This conversation was difficult for us both. We cried together, we attempted to compromise, but the truth of it all boiled down to if he needs me, or even just wants me, I'm going to do everything reasonably in my power to be there. We again took the night for ourselves to process. And that leads us to the final conversation, which was about our future. She told me she had known the end was coming and had begun to accept it long before our conversation. I agreed. We're also planning a move Jess out party between just us 2 where we try to have fun with it and reconnect as friends. She told me, in customary breakup fashion, that she's going to cut bangs in my bathroom at some point during this planned night. So, was I the jerk for saying that my friend's trauma was more important than her comfort? Yeah. I was. Not only because it was harsh, but because I didn't say it sooner so she could make an informed decision about whether it was a life she wanted or not. Now she gets that. I feel gracious and humbled by her forgiveness and understanding, and thankful to commenters who provided insight. A fly entered our house and my wife suggested smearing my hand in dog poop to attract the fly so it would be easier to unalive it. I ended up listening to her. This morning my wife handed me the poop bag which we use to store our poop in for fertilizing our farm. She told me to toss it outside for her, and I put the dog poop to the side as I was telling her about how I saw one of our cows getting roped by another cow, so I stepped in and tried to fight the cow doing the roping. At this exact moment a fly appeared out of nowhere on the wall right next to where we were talking. I've dealt with a lot of flies before, and I'm actually really good at unaliving them. The key is the flick of the neck. You need to swing your head at it fast and hard and just headbutt the fly with a vengeance so you can make contact before it bolts away. I lined up my head and was about to execute, when my wife yelled at me, "You don't use your hand." I looked around and saw her flip-flop near the door, and she was like, "Just use the poop." I picked up the little green poop bag, took the poop out and smeared my hand with it. I lined up my shot, now with my hand, and slapped the crap out of that fly. When the hand made impact with the wall, it splattered the crap everything open. It sprayed on my face, it got in my hair, it was on the floor, it was on the wall. When I looked down, a big chunk was just in the center of my shirt, and it was on my jeans. I stood there in disbelief, as my wife burst out laughing. My 2 young sons were just rounding the corner and watched it happen, and they started rolling on the floor crying in laughter. Everyone was laughing and having a great time, as I stood there wondering what the F had just happened. I didn't even unalive the fly. What everyday skill becomes suspicious if you're too good at it? 1. Remember things about people. I've lied about not knowing things to not seem like a creep. 2. Walking with minimal sound. 3. Noticing cameras. 4. Remembering someone else's schedule. I've had people get a little freaked out when I ask how a specific appointment or task is going when I remember them telling me about it days prior. 5. I once had a neighbor catch me while I was taking groceries out of my car and ask if I knew how to open locked doors as they locked themselves out by mistake. Went over to their door, took out a credit card and shimmied my way in no more than 5 seconds. Probably was bittersweet for them. 6. Counting bills quickly. I bartended in New York City where closing time was after 4 a.m., so the quicker I counted out my register, the quicker I could go home. I can count a stack of bills quick. 7. Being able to quickly convert between ounce and gram. 8. Being able to recognize pills. No, I'm not a drug dealer, I just work in a pharmacy and some of them are very recognizable. 9. Hey son, let's drink your first beer together. Me, slams beer. 10. I have very fast reading comprehension. People never believe me when I say that I've already read it and get frustrated, but I don't take longer. I can't do simple math, but I read like lightning. I'm also very good with card handling, so everyone suspects that I cheated later. I encourage that because it keeps their eyes on my hands, and not on my face. Being a very persuasive salesperson. 12. The removal of stains. 13. Being able to tell somebody by the sound of their footsteps. When friends or family approach my door, I know who's about to knock. I love creeping them out by saying come in their name. 14. Typing. I'm definitely going to say typing. I type at a little over 150 words per minute. I've been repeatedly accused of faking it, which sounds funny until it's your co-workers and boss saying it, calling your work into question. 15. Genuine kindness. My father was such a good soul and people were suspicious about his kindness. Sometimes 16 knot tying, 17 knife sharpening unless you're a chef, 18 lying, 19 interrogating someone without them knowing. I was at a school thing and one of my girl classmates really liked a guy but was too nervous to talk to him. She asked me to figure out some of his info and I ended up getting first name, last name, school, hobbies and grade level. She was happy but more than a little creeped out about how casually I did it. Today I learned that Reddit thinks lockpicking is an everyday skill. Update. AITAH for not telling my wife about an incident with her best friend. That happened between my wife's best friend who is currently staying at our house. I was not sure how to bring it up to my wife and you guys really helped me a lot in understanding the urgency of telling my wife. I also got some cool ideas on how to bring up the subject without making it awkward for anyone. For everyone saying Anna was doing it on purpose, I did not agree with it as I am an extremely average looking person and women don't chase me. However, things since last night have been just crazy and I think I am spiraling a bit. Sorry for the long post. So, I decided to tell my wife last night as soon as she came home about the incident. I like the idea of jokingly bringing up casually so that we both can laugh about it and then forget it. Last night when my wife came home, I made sure I stayed in our bedroom. I asked Anna if she could stay with my kid downstairs. As my wife was changing, I asked her if Anna still borrow her clothes. Anna had to borrow them regularly when she first moved. Long story. My wife told me yes, and she has told Anna she can take anything from her closet if she needs it. I asked my wife if Anna told her about the funny incident from Friday. My wife said no, and I told her the whole story about how I came home early and Anna came in the room almost naked to get her clothes, and how embarrassing it was for both of us. As my wife was listening to this, she completely froze and turned pale. She started murmuring in Spanish, which is her and Anna's native language. I don't understand Spanish really well, but I understood the words hombre casado and otra vez. I asked her if she is okay, and she sat next to me and asked me to explain everything in detail. I just told her it was nothing and she must have not heard me coming in. I was trying to laugh it off, but my wife had water in her eyes. I kept on telling her it was not a big deal, but she kept on asking me for more details. She asked me how Anna talks to me. I told her that Anna barely talks to me since she moved in except few words here and there. My wife then asked me about 3 weeks ago when my wife had gone to visit her parents for 4 days. Anna did not want to go with her and stayed back. I told her that Anna was just acting normal. She or I would cook dinner after I got home from work while the other took care of the kid. The only thing different was Anna generally spending her evening in her room. However, when I was sitting in the living room watching TV after the kids slept, Anna came and sat on the sofa next to me but did not talk to me. I asked her if she wants me to change the channel or stream something she likes, and she just said she wanted to get out of her room. However, she did not flirt with me or do anything unusual. I kept on telling my wife that it was just an accident, and I really did not understand why she reacted so emotionally to it. My wife refused to answer and just said okay and agreed with me. However, she told me I should have told her about the incident sooner and should not keep any secrets from her and gave me a big lecture. I told her that I did not think it was a big deal and thought Anna would tell her, but glad I brought it up. After dinner my wife messaged Anna to join us and she came out. While talking, my wife brought up the incident and told Anna that I mentioned about the incident. And she does not need to feel embarrassed. Such things happen when we are all in the same house and is not a big deal. Anna was firstly taken by surprise but then told my wife she was just scared to tell her because she thought my wife would judge her because of her past. My wife gave her a stare, and she quickly changed the topic. At night, I asked my wife what the hell was going on. I am 1.5 feet taller than my wife. So when I take a shower I make sure to set the shower head as high as possible. Then when she gets in she can't reach it to lower it and she has to call me in. So I get to see her naked. She has yet to realize that setting is too high for even me.
Mom kicked me to the curb when she found out I wasn't having a miscarriage. My mom was never a good mother. I ran away at 13 to live with my dad. Found out I have something called a tilted uterus. It never caused me issues so I never paid the news any mind. Fast forward a few months, and I'm 14 now. Home at my dad's alone, suddenly I collapse in agonizing pain. I'll try to describe the pain. My back felt like someone had a hold of my lower spine and was trying to pull it from my body, while simultaneously twisting a knife in my stomach. All I could do was crawl my way to my bed and cry. Dad and his girlfriend came home to hear me screaming. He asked what was wrong. I tried to act tough. "Oh, it's nothing, just my period. I'll be fine," etc. His girlfriend told him that was not normal and I needed to go to the hospital. Being the manly man he is, didn't want to handle lady problems and called my mom to take me. My mom shows up pissed but remains outwardly calm until I get in the car and pull away. Instantly starts telling me that I'm probably having a miscarriage. That's what I get for being a slut and getting pregnant at 14. I, between sobbing and screaming in pain, try to explain what the doctor told me. She of course calls me a fucking liar and to shut up. Got to the emergency room, sign in, her explaining her theory to the nurse. Finish and told to go wait. While in the waiting room she never said a word to me, just glared. The nurse calls me in and tells her to wait until the exam is done. Not happy about this but is not willing to argue with the nurse, she sat down and shut her mouth. When the exam finished, she got called in. The doctor explains everything I had tried to and follows up by telling her that I'm definitely not pregnant. It's just a bad month and it will pass in a day or two. He can give me something for the pain. Mom denied that offer. I was sent home just to wait it out with instructions to take it easy. Get in the car, still crying, and no words from her. Very tense. I admit, knowing my mom, that this next sentence was a mistake. But in my delirious state, I just wanted my mom's comfort, for her not to be mad at me as I did nothing wrong. I said, "I told you I wasn't lying." Instantly pulls over the car, simply, but very angrily says, "Get out of my car now." She left me there to get myself home. No cell, no money, in crippling pain. I managed to walk a few blocks very slowly, the last few I literally crawled back to my dad's. Finally getting home, his girlfriend found me and helped me up to my bed. Got me Tylenol, hot water bottle, and a washcloth. I told them what my mom did. His girlfriend was stunned and my dad just shook his head in disgust. That was the last time I spoke to or seen my mom in 8 years. Stupidly I reached out when I was actually pregnant. But that's a whole different story.
People who are good at flirting, what are some social cues us oblivious people should watch out for? Everyone is giving good advice, but flirting didn't click for me until I heard it described not as a set of behaviors to look out for, but as an escalation of suggestive behaviors couched in plausible deniability. Put practically, if someone is doing something to engage you that feels extra, lots of touching, looking at you in a way that feels a bit too long, or doing a lot of poking fun and complimenting you, then that might be flirting or it might not. That's the whole point. Plausible deniability, they can safely disengage at any time. If you want to know if someone's flirting, you need to test it. You do that by escalating things, but just a bit, so that now you have plausible deniability. Touch them back in a comfortable way, maintain eye contact, or joke compliment them back. If they escalate back and continue to do so as you escalate in turn, that is flirting. Eventually one of you will break cover and do something with clear intent, a kiss, an approach plus ask for a number, or straight up telling them what you think of them and that you're interested. Otherwise, if you escalate and they don't change their behavior or they back off, then they were probably just being friendly and you should take the hint and do the same. Don't know if that's something obvious to people, but it was definitely not for me, and college parties would have been way less fun had I not known. Hopefully this can help someone else too.
Men who have been stalked, what's your story? When I was a teacher at a private school for children with special needs, I was stalked by the mother of one of my students. I was 22, she was 43, started noticing she would write very lengthy notes in her child's communication notebook, describing the difficulties of being a single mom of a child with autism. Morphed into frequent phone calls to my classroom to see how her child was doing and oversharing of what she was doing did over the weekend. At this point, I mentioned to my supervisor that I had a weird vibe from this mom and showed her the notebook and call logs. She then started showing up at the places where I went to on my lunch break. OMG. What a coincidence. 4 times in 1 week was a red flag. Again, I mentioned this to my supervisor as well as HR. I have a feeling that they were more concerned with tuition money than keeping an eye on me. The kicker was she left a 4-page note under my car windshield wiper at my home. As soon as I saw the name on the letter, I got in my car, drove back to school, and caught my supervisor before she went home for the day. I presented her with the letter, which we read together for the first time. Nothing normal about it. Basically, she thought that I'd be a great father for her son and that she fantasized about me. 4 pages. Within an hour or so, the supervisor talked to enough people about it and I already established the history by reporting everything to her, so they decided to give the parent a choice. Cease and desist all contact with me and the child goes to a new class, or he is out of the school. She accepted. But she stared at me for a week or 2 in the parking lot. Crazy stare, guard your back look. I don't miss teaching, mostly because of stuff like this.
Baristas of Reddit, have you ever had a crush on a customer? I'm a college student majoring in arts because I love to draw. It's been my passion since I was in middle school and I've been improving every day in my life to make it big. But for now, I'm working in a coffee shop where I can do latte art and make strangers smile with my beautiful intricate drawings. I'm pretty much known as the latte guy around work and all my customers express how cute their drawings are. It's honestly the best part of my job. That was, until the summer of 2016 when I met Odette. Immediately, her name reminded me of that Swan Princess movie because my baby sister made me watch it religiously with her whenever I was home during breaks. And just like in the movie, she was gorgeous. She was pale as snow, her brown hair was tucked perfectly in a messy bun, and I would soon come to learn that the color purple was made specifically for her. She ordered a latte, I asked for a name for her order, Odette, and I was ready to draw a swan on her drink. It was a cliché and she probably got that reference very often, but I didn't care, I was ready to impress her with my art regardless. Except that as I was about to make the design, I felt her watching me and my hands started shaking like crazy. I persevered, but for once in my life, my latte art looked awful. It was just a bunch of weird, squiggly lines and you couldn't even tell what I was trying to make. There was no way I could give this to her, she'd probably think I hate her. So I went and remade the order, this time without trying to draw the swan because more people had come in and I couldn't keep them waiting. So I gave her an artless drink and she went about her day. As the hours passed, my latte art seemed to be beautiful again. At the time, I didn't understand why hers turned out so ugly, especially since I was trying to impress her. Well, Odette came 2 days later and she ordered a latte again. I tried my art again and she kept her focus on me, just quietly observing me while my hands mimicked an earthquake. There was no helping it, I couldn't make my perfect art. This happened every time she came into the coffee shop, which was actually often. And she always looked more beautiful than I remembered. One day though, Odette came with some friends. Odette and another girl ordered lattes. The girl asked me if we did latte art, to which I said yes, but then realized I shouldn't have said that because Odette looked very confused. She was probably wondering why her previous lattes were blank. The girl asked if I could draw a flower on hers and Odette asked for a heart. That was easier than drawing a swan, so I got right to it. I drew the flower first, just to see if I was the problem, and it came out perfect. But before I could draw the heart, Odette came over to the counter. She was wearing a short purple dress and like I said before, purple was her color. I couldn't keep my eyes off her, she was just so gorgeous. I knew then I wanted to talk to her, I wanted to learn everything there was to know about her, I wanted to know her perfections and her flaws. Hell, I'll just say it, I liked Odette. She caught me staring so I went back to making her drink. She wanted a heart, but suddenly, I forgot how to draw that. I genuinely tried but nothing came out good so I shamelessly had to give her a heartless drink. Her friend raved about her flower and how pretty it was, but Odette looked sad. I never wanted to see frown ever again. Her friends went to sit outside in front of the shop and I could see she didn't touch her drink for the first 5 minutes. She just stared at it aimlessly. So I decided to remake her drink, on the house of course, and draw the heart. Lo and behold, it turned out perfect. That's when it clicked, Odette's so gorgeous and she makes my hands shake so bad, which always makes my art look terrible. I'm just nervous around her. I went outside to give her the latte with the heart on it and she instantly piped up. She got really happy and couldn't stop smiling. I decided then I always wanted to make her happy so that her beautiful smile would always shine. Before her friends left, she came up to me at the counter and thanked me for the drink. She said that she thought I didn't like her since I never drew anything for her and today basically confirmed that, until I gave her the other drink. That's when she asked for my number. I felt so many emotions in that moment and I kept thinking, holy F, this beautiful girl asked me for my number. Later that night, she texted me and our conversations flowed so naturally, even though behind the screen I was nervous as hell. Every conversation felt like I was talking to my best friend, my soulmate. I even confessed the truth about the latte fiasco and she thought it was really cute. Eventually I asked her out and it was the happiest I had ever seen her. Edit, scratch that. I proposed to Odette a few years later and that was the happiest I had ever seen her. My brother missed his wedding and blamed me. Now my family hates me. I still can't believe this happened or that I'm taking all the blame for it. My brother was supposed to get married a week ago but he never arrived at the wedding venue on time. I know why, and because I was technically with him for a night, my family thinks it was my responsibility to take care of him. Well, the night before his wedding, my brother called all of his friends and talked about having one last day of freedom before he married the old ball and chain. He apparently wanted one last night as a single man. Mind you, we already had a bachelor party, so I don't know what gave him the idea to do another one. His friends were all up for it though, so we all drove to a STRP club of his choice. Something about having to live with the same woman for the rest of his life gave him the ick. I reminded him the entire time that he shouldn't drink too much because the very next day was his wedding. He told me to lay off and he knew what he was doing. At some point I did stop telling him and just watched him go to town with all the alcohol he was drinking. I'm not much of a drinker, in fact I try to stay away from it as much as possible, so I only drank one beer and called it a night. Everyone else was insanely wasted though. I had to call Ubers for the friends and drove the groomsman and my brother to his house. I went back to my own house where I slept soundly. The next day, I went about my day before getting ready for my brother's wedding. I'm actually not one of his groomsmen, I was just a guest, which is why I don't think it's fair that all the responsibility latched onto me out of nowhere. If anything, our older brother should have been blamed since he's the best man and was tasked with making sure the groom attended the wedding. So I drove up to the wedding and my dad instantly started asking me about my brother's whereabouts. I told him I haven't seen him since last night when I dropped him off at his house after drinking for hours. That's when they told me no one from the groom's party was here and they've been trying to contact them for hours. An hour goes by and my parents try to delay the wedding as much as possible. At this point the bride finds out that her husband is nowhere to be found and immediately thinks the worst. He got cold feet and was standing her up at her wedding. I wouldn't put it past my brother with the way he was acting yesterday. He seemed like he did not want to get married and I actually felt bad for her. The wedding was delayed as much as possible and my father went to get my brother from his house, which was 2 hours away. The sun was setting by the time we got word that my father had picked him up and was on his way. My brother talked to the bride who had been crying all day. Her makeup was smeared and her hair got all messy. I tried to comfort her by saying that he definitely was not thinking of leaving her and he just overslept because he had a crazy night out, but she didn't believe anything I said. Because we were there all day, the guests ate the food, the priest had grown tired of waiting, and the bride even changed out of her wedding dress. It was not an enjoyable wedding. My brother came and instead of hugging his crying bride, he sucker punched me. I yelled at him asking what the hell was wrong with him and he started blaming me for making him miss his wedding. I saw my father looking disappointed at me as well. We started arguing back and forth and it wasn't until the bride got in between us that the screaming match stopped. I had told everybody who asked what happened. My brother went out, partied too hard, I dropped him off at his house with all his groomsmen, went home, and then came to the wedding. Everybody had believed me, but when my dad told this to my brother as he was berating him during the 2-hour car ride, my brother spit out a different story to save his own SS. Apparently, it was my idea to go party and he didn't want to go but I dragged him. He said I was the one that had taken him to a STRP club and said he needed to let loose before he married the old ball and chain. Then, I got him wasted on purpose because I wanted him to miss his wedding since I was jealous of his relationship. He told everyone that I was the one who wanted to marry the bride, so by making him miss his own wedding, I could swoop in and pull the if you ever need someone to talk to card to try to win her over. Everyone immediately believed his sob story, so they all turned their backs on me and villainized me. I didn't even have the friends to back me up because they were all so intoxicated. I'm surprised they remember we went out. It didn't hurt that my brother had used factual details in his story and just swapped it to make me seem like the bad guy. One of them even said they remembered someone saying old ball and chain, which confirmed my brother's story. They asked me why I didn't bring that up and I said it was because I didn't want the bride to feel even worse than she already did by bringing up that her fiancé called her that. Nobody believed me and said I was a liar since I left out all sorts of details in my side of the story. My brother kicked me out of his wedding and even a week later, I'm still getting messages from my parents telling me I embarrassed them. My brother did get married, but because he's on his honeymoon, I haven't contacted him, but trust me, when he gets back, I'll be the one sucker punching him. My wife won't talk to me anymore, because I told her not to talk to me anymore. My wife and I have been together for 6 years, married for 2. She used to talk to me all the time. She used to share her day with me, just randomly tell me her thoughts, stuff like that. However, she also used to want to talk about problems we were having. A lot. It felt like we were always talking about what I did wrong. She thought I spent too much time talking to exes. We were friends, I don't prioritize her over work, it's my career, am I supposed to quit? And mostly that I didn't care enough about her. There were so many different ways that she came to that conclusion. But it was like we were just always sitting down for a serious talk. So, I told her about a year ago that I didn't want to talk anymore. I was just tired of hearing everything I was doing wrong. I provide everything we need, can I just have a break? I told her that if she had a problem with the way I did things then she could get out of my house and we'd get a divorce. She told me that she was trying to communicate because she didn't feel appreciated and that I had one foot out the door. But I think that's ridiculous. I know it's harsh, but I was at my wit's end. So now, a year later, she barely talks to me at all. When I ask about her day, she says fine. When I talk to her about work or politics or my day, she says oh wow. Cool. And walks away. Her attitude isn't bad. She's very sweet, but it's just like she doesn't care anymore. I didn't want to talk about our problems anymore, but I didn't mean stop talking, period. We really don't talk about anything that doesn't have to do with our life/household. In the evenings, she just turns on the TV and we watch something until bed. Now I don't know what to do because I just found out today that she won a pretty big award at her job. And she didn't tell me. Last Friday, she said she had to work late and it was cool. I didn't ask. Today, I found out that she was really at a dinner where she was celebrated for this award. She invited some of her friends and her mom and brothers. I ran into her brother at the store today and he mentioned the dinner and said that he was sorry I couldn't make it. I asked what he meant and he said the dinner, how I wasn't able to go because I was sick. I asked him to explain the whole thing to me so now he knows too. What am I supposed to do? Is she punishing me or something? Do I tell her that I know? Why wouldn't she tell me? I didn't think she'd take it this far and now I'm thinking she's being petty. Does anyone have experience here? I love my wife and I'd do anything for her, but I'm so confused.
Humans once wielded formidable magical power, but with over 7 billion of us on the planet now, mana has spread far too thinly to have any effect. When hostile aliens reduces humanity to a mere fraction, the survivors discover an old power has begun to reawaken once again. First contact was made almost 10 years ago. They seemed well versed in warfare. In less than a day there wasn't a satellite left in the sky or a cable under the sea. Communication between nations fell to old ground bounce, long-range radios pulled out of mothballs. Conventional weapons proved to be ineffective and the nuclear option didn't fare much better. Eventually even the old analog radios were jammed. Steadily they started to wipe us out. Great mechanized beasts roamed the land. Directed energy weapons reduced any caught in their sight to ash. Slowly word began to spread of old legends come to light. Wizards, witches, even warlocks making pacts with demons to gain power. Men and women alike were seen calling forth searing bolts of lighting from the sky, ripping the ground open to devour and crush any of the aliens' creations that wandered too close to the last bastions of humanity, liquefying the great metal monsters with conjured fire. Even death was no relief to our fallen comrades as the necromancers raised forth gargantuan armies of the dead, crushing the invaders with the sheer mass of rotting meat and gleaming bone. As our species continued to fight for our existence, more of the things that go bump in the night started coming to light. At first they appeared to be fellow humans, but it soon became clear that was not the case. The first were the werewolves, nigh unkillable but by blessed silver. Transforming into great beasts, they used claws and teeth to rend through armor only magic could penetrate. These furry juggernauts relied on humans not for food as in the old tales, but as breeding stock. As we continued to dwindle in number, they could no longer stalk the shadows. Though small in numbers, they made up for it in sheer brutality. Soon all of the others concealed in the shadows made themselves known. The vampires were less well received than the wolves, but in the end they needed us. Becoming a donor for one elevated one's physically abilities for a time. Though to some's disappointment, crosses, sunlight and garlic did not faze them. The Fae became another ally, though much less trustful. One had to be cautious when speaking with them. Never make an open-ended bargain with one, it never ends in your favor. Whatever the invaders' mechanized army consisted of, it was not iron, and they seemed to take much glee in the wanton destruction they could wield. Many hopped the elves and dwarves of some fairy tales would come to be, but to this day none have materialized. Though the dragons made their presence known, they more are focused on what little territory they still held, and if you happen to occupy it you have one hell of a home security system. Rumblings of the old gods walking among man once more have been heard but not verified. As of now, hope has yet to completely die for humanity and its newly rediscovered allies. While the dragons and invaders still rule the skies, we have done much to retake the land. The current status of humanity as a whole is still not truly known. While magic is useful as a weapon, it does not give itself over willingly to be used to pass missives. Communication over the oceans and across continents is still a slow process, and we are just starting to retake the seas. Field Commander, 3rd Magus Division, Captain Jasper D. Wolf.
Am I the jerk for wanting to steal my stepdaughter's inheritance? My 28, fiancé, 38, proposed to me last week. We've been dating for 2 years. He has a 15-year-old daughter from a previous marriage. Her mom passed away 5 years ago and I have a 6-year-old son. When my fiancé and I started to date, I noticed that his daughter had the master bedroom. I found it weird because I've never seen a child taking over the master bedroom before, but he brushed it off saying that the house was hers, so it was normal she slept there. With no further explanation, I thought he meant as an inheritance from when he passed away, which still was weird because he was alive. But either way, I didn't say anything because we were only beginning and I knew it wasn't my business. Now that we're engaged, I said that I wanted to move here to live together for a while before we decided the wedding date. He said that we could do it or we could get our own house now because we will have to do it regardless. I asked what was wrong with this one and he said nothing, but that it was her daughter's. To be honest, now I did get a little mad. I said it wasn't fair. He called it his daughter's when we were about to get married and he was supposed to adopt my son. So now the house should be theirs and not only hers. I also said I wanted his daughter out of the master because it was ours. He got a little nervous and said that the house really belonged to his late wife, and when she passed, the house became his daughter's. He has enough money for maybe 60% of a house, but that we will have to pay off the rest together. I was shocked and said that he could ask her daughter for the house because she's only 15 and he is her dad, but he said no, that it was her daughter's. I got angry and called him a jerk because he should have told me the truth before, and he said that it's not like we will be homeless or anything. We still have 3 years and maybe 4 after that because his daughter will leave for college. He said he has always known he has to move out and that's why he saved. I asked what else belonged to his daughter that I didn't know of, and he said that his car, a 2020 Kia, the car that I always use, will be hers when she leaves for college. I called him a jerk again and left with my son to my parents' house. When I told my family, my brother laughed because I talked and acted like a gold digger and called me a jerk. I felt betrayed and lied. Am I really the jerk? My ex-girlfriend wants a second chance. Should I give it? 6 years ago, my ex-girlfriend and I started our relationship, and we were like two peas in a pod right from the start. After 2.5 years, she became pregnant unexpectedly. Although we had discussed starting a family before, we hadn't anticipated it happening so soon. We had several conversations about the situation, sought advice from friends who were already parents, and eventually decided to embrace parenthood together. We made a pact that our child's well-being would always be our priority, even if our romantic relationship didn't last. Just before the 2020 lockdown began, 3 weeks before our due date, our perfect little girl arrived, and both of us fell head over heels in love with her. Although it was a significant adjustment, our daughter was a blessing, and we adapted to parenthood relatively easily. However, everything changed 3 months later. One evening, while working late, I received a text from my mother informing me that my girlfriend had dropped off our daughter with her to run some errands. 4 hours passed, and she hadn't returned, nor was she answering her phone. Worried, I tried calling her, but she didn't respond either. I left work immediately, picked up our daughter, and returned home to find a note from my girlfriend. In it, she explained that the stress of the lockdown and caring for the baby had become overwhelming, and she needed some time alone to clear her head. She asked me not to contact her and assured me that we would talk soon. Unfortunately, days turned into weeks, and there was no further communication from her or anyone else, except for occasional visits from her sister who seemed unaware of her whereabouts. Fast forward 3 years, and my ex-girlfriend has begun reaching out again, albeit slowly. It started with liking photos of our daughter on Instagram and leaving the occasional comment, but nothing more until last week. She sent me a text expressing that she had seen how well our daughter and I were doing and requested to meet up. I felt hesitant, considering how she had walked out on me and, more importantly, our daughter. However, I couldn't forget our previous agreement that our daughter's well-being was paramount. Reluctantly, I agreed to meet her for a coffee so she could see our daughter, but now I find myself having second thoughts. How do I forgive her for abandoning us? And more importantly, how do I ensure our daughter's emotional well-being moving forward? Update: my ex-girlfriend wants a second chance. Should I give it? A few days ago, as planned, I met up with my ex-girlfriend at a local cafe. I arrived early, trying to gather my thoughts on what I wanted to say after 3 years of not seeing her. Although I didn't mention it in my original post, I had decided not to bring our daughter along. My ex had contacted numbers of my family members, so she made arrangements for our daughter to be with a coworker. When my ex arrived, she seemed a little disappointed but not surprised to see that I was alone. We engaged in small talk for a few minutes before finally addressing the significant elephant in the room. I asked her where she had been for the past 3 years, missing out on our daughter's life. She admitted that she had been struggling with postpartum depression and didn't want to show it in front of our daughter. She acknowledged that leaving the way she did was wrong, but she felt the need to focus on herself and seek therapy. Curious, I asked why it took her 3 years to resurface. She mentioned sending a text on our daughter's first birthday, but that was the extent of her contact. Tearfully, she confessed that she had been scared of what I would think of her for disappearing. In a way, she had reason to be scared, as I was not just hurt by being dumped but furious that she abandoned our daughter. However, during our conversation, I could sense that she had grown as a person over the past few years, and that gave me some reassurance. We spoke for over an hour, and as I prepared to leave, she asked about our standing. I expressed my appreciation for her efforts to change, but I told her that it would take time for me to fully move on. However, as a gesture of goodwill, I showed her a video of our daughter, which was a favorite of mine. It was her, at around 6 or 7 months, interacting with one of my dad's cows, and they were mooing at each other. Before parting ways, I exchanged phone numbers with my ex, intending to maintain more direct contact rather than relying on social media. I also agreed to send her a couple of photos of our daughter. I appreciate all the advice I received last time, and I'm wondering what the next steps are for my ex and me. My hope is that we can coexist and maintain a healthy friendship for the sake of our daughter. However, due to what happened before, it is challenging to completely trust my ex. What do you guys think? Side note, there are 2 things I didn't mention to my ex. 1. I have no intention of rekindling our romantic relationship. I am open to co-parenting if she can prove that she won't disappear again, but that is as far as it goes. Although I loved her deeply in the past, I have now changed as a person, and that chapter has closed. 2. At one point, I contemplated putting our daughter up for adoption. She was about 9 months old at the time, and I was mentally and emotionally drained. Work was stressful, and coming home to my daughter didn't bring me joy, as much as I loved her. I had started the adoption process, but one night, as I looked at her in her cot, she looked back at me with a cute smile, her blue eyes shining as if I was her entire world. That moment reassured me that things would get better, so I canceled the adoption plan and never looked back. P.S. Reddit didn't allow me to post this in the original group for some reason, so I'm sharing it here with a link. Original post. Has a video game ever ruined your life? So I just moved into my boyfriend's apartment in January and brought my Switch over. We are both Zelda fanatics and he wanted to play, which I was cool with because it was my all-time favorite game, and I love watching gameplay just as much as actually playing. All was good until they released Tears of the Kingdom. He works during the day and I'm a streamer, so I work at night, but I'm spending my days running our errands, so I don't have much time to play during the day. In the beginning I was only letting myself play for 2 hours before he got home from work, then I would cook dinner. That slowly crept into me playing more after he went to bed. Then I started playing after dinner while he was watching TV. I would bring the console out on the porch so we could still spend physical time together. Then it crept into me playing on the TV in a different room, completely neglecting him. When I tell you, there is absolutely no sense of time when playing this game. It just basically doesn't exist. I feel like I'm on it 45 minutes, then boom, it's 5 a.m. I basically am getting in bed when he's getting up to go to work. I just downloaded it last week and I've already logged 50 hours. This happened 3 nights in a row, and it's starting to be a problem obviously. But last night was the last straw. As he was going to bed he told me it was time to get off and I should go to bed. He tried to physically grab my controller and I yanked it out of his hand and yelled at him for it. It's getting so bad I'm also not streaming hardly at all, and I've been canceling all of my plans with friends, family, etc. I kept playing that night until 1 a.m. when my TV started tilting off the mount. I'm pretty short, so I had to put my knee up on it to tilt the TV back, and the whole glass stand fell off the wall and shattered all over the wall. Obviously he heard this loud bang and came out and just laughed at me and told me to leave. I have a second apartment in the same building where I do my streaming, so I went down there and was freaking out. So what do?
It's 2 a.m. I refuse to leave that mess just sitting there for me to wake up and see and be reminded of my severe Tears of the Kingdom addiction.
So naturally, I call my usual handyman and shockingly he answers. It's 2 a.m. He said he can be there in 30 minutes. I meet him in the parking garage and he brought this huge truck with a trailer of tools. Finally we get up to the destruction apartment and he locked me out. So I have to start banging on the door, waking this poor man up again, and he answers the door unclothed and sees me standing there with some random guy at 3 a.m. He just looks at me, shakes his head, lets us in and goes to bed. I tell handyman we gotta be quick and quiet, but this has to fixed ASAP. He started to fix it but begins drilling it into the wall which is connected into the bedroom. Obviously boyfriend is beyond mad. Whatever, TV stand fireplace thing is fixed. But guess what I decide to do? Take my Switch and keep playing in the closet. I black out at some point, probably around 5 a.m., with no recollection of anything after I got in the closet, sprawled out on the carpet floor, controller still in my hand and a side of ranch and a quesadilla in the other. I crawl into our bed and woke up at around 10:30 a.m. I start looking for my Switch. I look in the closet, the bedroom, the living room. It's nowhere. I go down to our second apartment where my boyfriend is working. We both use it for work, thinking maybe I brought it down there. Nope. I sit down, look him in the eyes and go, "Where's the Switch?" He just smiles and says, "You know where it is." Then it dawned on me. "You put it in your safe, didn't you?" Yup. I lose my mind. Like I know I was getting really addicted, but I'm mostly mad. I know it's probably for my own good and the good of our relationship, but I'm so mad right now I can't hardly speak to him. I want to cry and scream and I feel like I'm going through withdrawals. I love him but I also want to unalive him and myself.
What was your worst time so effed moment? I'll never forget this moment. My mom and I were driving down I-95 in Connecticut in the winter. We were traveling at easily 70 miles an hour. It was clear, no snow, but cold, and well below freezing. My mom, who is around 60 years old at the time, and an excellent driver, hit a patch of black ice while driving around a slight bend. Our car, a mid-sized SUV, does a complete 360-degree spin. I'll never forget the moment that I locked eyes with the driver in the car behind us. The absolute terror on his face surely matched my own. It was as if he knew he was looking into the eyes of a man about to die in a horrific car accident. In that split second I resigned myself to that fate. I screamed like a 14-year-old girl at a Justin Bieber concert with One Direction as a surprise appearance. My mom, on the other hand, remained unfazed. She was like Vin Diesel in the Fast and the Furious, colder than the ice patch we spun out on. She didn't hit the brakes. She didn't freak out. She was in her element. She was in the effing zone. The car completed a full revolution and we simply continued driving. We never even slowed down. After a few moments of stunned silence, my 60-year-old mother smirks, with this twisted grin, and asks, "How good am I?" I swear to this day, that she enjoyed it.
Woman, what are some questions you've always wanted to ask men, but were too embarrassed? Do you use that opening in your boxer's briefs to pee, or do you just pull down the top of your boxer's briefs? That little opening just doesn't seem that useful. Thank you in advance. Can you feel our bobs when we hug? Is it true you really get random boners? What happens to your balls when you're on? Are they just banging around? Do they stick between your thighs? Do they end up tucked? I've been dying to know, thanks. What does it feel like to run with no underwear on? Does it just flop around? Does it hurt? Does the bounce?
I discovered that I'm a betrayal baby. Lily, my older sister, came to my parents' house for the weekend. She discovered that her husband, Ian, of almost 4 years, had slept with another woman. Understandably, she was at her lowest point and looked to our parents for support. I tried to support and comfort her, but as soon as I tried to get closer, the feelings of betrayal were mixed with anger and revolt. Lily started hurling words at me, making our parents intervene. Among many things said, she said that I was just a screw-up baby that dad accidentally had, and that she was in the same situation as mom. I saw my father turn pale and my mother pull her out of the room, while she tried to understand. I didn't know what she meant by that, so I looked at my father, but he didn't say a word and just went to the other room. I just remember sitting on the floor, a little confused and shocked. Some time later, maybe 30 minutes, my mother came to me and told me the whole story. I'm really a baby of betrayal. Dad cheated on mom repeatedly and eventually, I was born. This is a known fact in our family, a fact that I honestly can't say whether I want to know or not. No longer hears conversations or explanations. Lily is the main focus now, as she threatened to harm herself. I don't know how I should feel right now. I feel detached from my family and I can't look at my mother or father. I'm angry that I didn't know this sooner, and even more angry at myself. I love my mother for raising me, but I don't know how to talk about this. I'm so ashamed of myself right now. Is this my biological mother? Why did I never know anything about her? What should I do? I'll meet the call count but won't make the calls count. I worked for an inbound call center that asked us to answer a certain number of calls a day, even during the quiet period, such as Christmas. On these days, you were lucky if you got 15 calls, let alone the 80 they wanted you to answer. Even on their busy days, it was tough to get 80 calls, TBH. So what myself and the guy I sat next to did was call our own mobile number, cell phone for you Americans, and constantly transfer that same call between one another, as each would register as an inbound call. We did this just about the entire 8-hour shift one day, and registered about over 500 calls apiece. When the head of customer care, C-suite level guy, brought us into the office together the next week, they questioned us not as to why we somehow churned through 500 calls in a day, but as to some tips and tricks we could pass on to the others. They asked us to look into developing a slide deck presentation pack and possibly work with an outside consulting firm to improve our processes. My mate broke his jaw. It hit the floor so hard. I facepalmed myself so hard, I think I was concussed for a week. Apparently these people were so stupid, they couldn't grasp the maths of with 7 hours of work, 8-hour shift, 1 hour work of breaks, we were churning calls through at greater than 1 call/minute. So we did begin the presentation. We worked on it for about a month, kept on stalling them when they asked for progress. The day before we were set to present this revolutionary process improvement, I handed in an intentionally misspelled latent handwritten resignation letter that was written on the back of a piece of paper that was an old shopping list. I had another job lined up anyway. My mate conveniently had a nondescript close family member fall ill and had to book a last-minute flight overseas, from which he never returned. We quit in a pay cycle week, so we both got our full worth. What happened to your school bully? In high school, I had 2 bullies. Mark was tall and lanky and always tripped me and kicked my book bag into the street. His bullying was more prankish than malicious, but it still bugged me. Tom was shorter, stocky, and brutal. I took a number of ass kickings, sent home bloodied, scuffed up, ripped clothes. I came home to my brothers and mom, who would cut me down. My mom would cuss me out and threatened, if you run from a fight, you'll have a worse one when you get home, a threat my siblings carried out without her okaying it. Tired of the beatings in school and the embarrassment and beating at home, I finally got the nerve to retaliate against Mark and Tom. I caught Mark off guard and pushed him really hard into a brick wall. I scratched up his face while punching him in the head several times, until he broke free and ran. Tom was a harder nut to crack. The first time I retaliated, he came up behind me and punched me between the shoulder blades, knocking the wind out of me. I turned to smash him with my trumpet case and he KO'd me with one punch. I came to in the nurse's office. The assistant principal was with the nurse and my mom. They were talking about the incident, and the nurse told them I had been in her office several times for bruises, twists, strains, but I never told who did them, and they were trying to blame mom, who was no angel, mind you, but that's forever ago, and, well, she's mom. I was still groggy when I got up from the bed in the nurse's office. I clumsily pushed past mom, the nurse, and Mr. A, went to my locker, and grabbed my skateboard. And then I sat, patiently, on the mini wall in front of the school. Where every day, I would take a beating or some other humiliation from Tom. He showed up, his menacing face making me afraid. I was terrified, but now wasn't the time to back down. My mom. My teachers. Other students. I wasn't going to get punked out this time. I stood up, still unsteady from the punch in the face I took earlier. I licked my lip, tasting the dried blood's metallic saltiness. And I felt the swelling on my cheek from the punch. And I got angry. It was a blur, but I do remember Tom diving at me, and I clobbered him in the face with my board, putting him on his back, and me, significantly smaller but enraged, pounding and kicking him mercilessly. Slamming my board into the side and top of his head. I lost it. I snapped. And I actually kind of liked it. I attacked my bully, and the rage against him and my family fueled my fighting back. I spent the night in juvenile lockup, but the school dropped the proposed expulsion charges against me, as it was proven I was bullied by this guy. There were no assault charges, because he assaulted me first. After that, though, the small, evil kid with the yellow skateboard was left alone, and his brothers thought twice or more before messing with me. My sister's boyfriend was tweaking because I took a shower. Turns out it's sinful for me to take a shower in my own home. I, 17, live at home with my 2 sisters and parents. My older sister, 22, has been dating her boyfriend, 21, for 3 months now. He's been sleeping over at our apartment ever since they started dating, but the frequency of the sleepovers have been increasing over the past few weeks. Our apartment isn't tiny, but it's small enough that we all share a bathroom. The room doesn't have air conditioning and only has one window that doesn't really let a draft through. When you shower, the room steams up a ton, so my whole life we've just either left the door ajar or opened the door fully as soon as we stepped out of the shower and did the rest of our bathroom stuff. The very first time my sister's boyfriend slept over, I was getting ready to go to bed in the bathroom and had the door closed, but unlocked. I was taking off my boxer shorts when he walked into the bathroom. He immediately apologized, closed the door, and we never spoke about it again. Well, last week I thought I was home alone and was taking a shower in the afternoon with the door ajar, as always. After I was done, I opened the bathroom door and continued with my routine, lotion, face cream, stuff like that, and noticed that my sister had come home during my shower. When I was done, I walked into the kitchen to find my sister and her boyfriend having an argument. I didn't want to intrude, so I left and soon heard the front door fall closed. In the evening I made dinner for our family, and while I was cooking, my other sister, 20, came and talked to me. Apparently, our oldest sister and her boyfriend argument was about me and my showering habits. He thinks it's disgusting that I shower with the door ajar and feels uncomfortable with me using the bathroom in my own house. This shocked me, because from the way our bathroom is set up, you can't even see the shower from outside of the door. I went to my other sister and asked her if this was true, and she refused to talk to me. It's not as if I was the only one that showered like this. We all do. I'm just the only one taking showers in the afternoon/evening when her boyfriend is usually there, because that's when I come home from hockey practice. My dead sister hid my fleshlight from my mom. 7 years ago, after a long hike with my sisters, I went hiking with my sisters. It was fun but exhausting, so I decided to take a shower when we got back home. I was also in the mood for some extra stress relief, so I grabbed my fleshlight and snuck it in with me. I start undressing and notice a little brown spot about halfway down my inner thigh. Upon close inspection, I realize it's a big, fat tick. I know I can't handle this situation alone, so I do what any sane, rational person would do. I burst out of the bathroom. After fumbling with the doorknob, I run straight into the living room where my eldest sister is watching TV. Panicking about the ticks, I tell her I have a situation that requires your assistance. Except all she heard was "Bah. Help?" She looks at me confused and then bursts out laughing. That was when I realized. I'm standing in the middle of the living room, completely naked, manhood and everything just hanging out. I cover my shame and run back to the bathroom to grab a towel. My sister eventually stops laughing enough to come check on me in the bathroom. I finally managed to put into words that I have a tick and need help removing it. Paranoid about the diseases ticks can spread, I also ask her to check for more. My mom hears all the racket and starts coming out of her room to see what's going on. At the same time, my sister looks me dead in the eye and points at the device, with the kind of face that just screams, "You're a freaking moron." Swiftly and gracefully, she discreetly snatched my device from the bathroom counter. She manages to stash it in the cabinet under the sink, just as my mother turned the corner. She ended up helping get rid of the tick and checking for more, obviously trying very hard not to laugh the entire time. I just sat there in silent misery. Afterward, I begged her to never mention this to anyone. I threw my fleshlight away later that week, on garbage day, so nobody else would see it. My sister passed away a couple days ago from an intentional OD. She left me a note reminding me of the events. One last joke before she went, I suppose. She told me she loved me and that I'd have to ask my other sisters to check for ticks in the future. Her last line was, "P.S. Get a girlfriend, you loser." Oddly enough, this is my favorite memory of her, despite how embarrassing it is. I'll never be able to share it with the rest of my family. I defended myself against my husband and now he holds it over me. For background, we've been together for 7 years. I, 28, met my husband TJ, 29, at a bar back during my last year of college. We dated for about 3 years and married in August of last year. He was, before all this, very kind and caring. He knew just what to say to make me smile and how to make me feel better when I was feeling down. We never really argued, and when we did, we solved it like adults and also just never talked down to each other. Back in January, we had one of the worst arguments we ever had. He changed his mind about wanting children. Suddenly he started asking how long we were going to wait to have kids and when we could start having unprotected sex. This confused me because we always said we never wanted to have kids, and I even said it was a deal breaker for me. When I reminded him of our past conversations about having children, he said I was selfish and accused me of only marrying him for his money. I told him he was wrong and that I just think I would be fit to be a mother, and reminded him how he himself said he would be an awful father. At this point he started getting angrier and angrier. He started to nudge me and kept yelling at him, asking if I thought I was better than him. The nudging turned into full-blown pushing, and after a couple of him pushing me around the living room, I pushed him back as hard as I can and screamed for him to leave me alone. When I pushed him, he bumped into the coffee table and fell. I ran away and locked myself in the bathroom and just sobbed. A few minutes later he knocked on the door and was crying and said he couldn't believe I would put my hands on him, and you never put your hands on someone you love. I just kept saying you pushed me first, and I was scared. He left that night and didn't come back for 2 days. He came back as if nothing happened, and he even dropped the conversation about kids. When I asked him if we could talk about it, he brushed it off and that it's in the past, and we both acted out of character. I took this as him forgiving me and we moved on. Now for the last month, every time he wants me to do something intimate or degrading and I say no, he would say something along the lines of, "Remember when you put your hands on me? That really hurt me, and if you do this for me, it will help me forgive and forget." I don't cave in every time he says it, but it rubs me the wrong way. The only other person who knows about what happened is my sister Julie, and she thinks he's showing his true colors and is an abusive jerk. I just feel so numb and confused because I love him so much, but I feel like I'm in the wrong still and I want us to work. I just want him to forgive me, but I hate that he still bring this up. I don't know what to do.